So I say most people believe there is something dramatically wrong in this country. They're not sure what it is.
Got your labor next your soul, interest slave in endless hole. It's so deep you'll never leave a text on key with no reprieve. Interest banking, future sold, paper money, fuck the gold. Print more money, there's no end, new interest rates thanks to the Fed. Inflation's up, we can't afford to import, source an endless hoard. Funding all this endless war, these are whores I must ignore. Feeling good, yeah that's my price. The system lets me have my vice. Bread and circus feels nice, feeling bad, take this advice. Just take this pill, watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, drain your vril. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. Never thought that this would happen. Should've prepped instead of fapping. Tires screeching, people scream. Living nightmare, not a dream. There goes all my dopamine, wiping off my jerk-off cream. I'm flappy, weak and unprepared to own a gun, I'm really scared. Water filters, batteries, cans of food and MREs. I really should've bought that shit before the social fabric ripped. Atomized, I'm all alone, no internet, can't scroll my phone. The lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. Came on, I can't believe, breathe a sigh of great relief. Boy, I love modernity, endless goon sesh never leave. If you're sad, just take this pill. Watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Football parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, join your grill. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out.
Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome to another episode of Library of Mass Destruction. I am your host, Capitalisimo, and with me, as always, is Christopher Sandbatch. How are you doing today, sir?
The artist formerly known as Christopher Sandbatch. I've left Twitter forever.
He's left Twitter for now.
No, it's forever. I mean, like I said I was leaving Twitter forever. I was like, I said a word in my mind. I set a word in my mind, and I said the next time I see this word, I'm out.
Do you so appreciate? Okay. So, if I say the word, will you drop the stream?
No.
Okay,
I mean, the damage is done now. You all traded me for a 93 follower irony bro.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Retronius. So the word was inauthentic.
Yeah.
And so what was it that bothered you so much about inauthentic? Inauthentic, I presume, as a criticism of something.
No, I don't like the word at all, because the word sort of by definition is an impossibility, because if you're able to if you're able to comment on the thing, if there is a thing, then the thing is by definition authentic. So anytime we're referring to inauthentic, we're either referring to something that actually is not physically real, or we're just being a little like an IQ midwit and gassing the world uselessly with words that we aren't smart enough to use.
Are you saying that things that are like things cannot be ersatz?
I don't know German.
Ersatz. I mean, it just means like a crude simulacra, a substitution.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. No, and this is
I would say it's a synonym for inauthentic.
Yeah. No, I don't know that it is, but yeah. No, the concept of things as a simulacrum. I don't buy it. I don't buy it, and I'm tired of being around people who do, because that's really, honestly, I think it's satanic. I think it's a satanic concept. It's a Gnostic demiurge.
This is fascinating. I love this. Okay.
Just being around. I think being around people who spend too much time concerned with this sort of thing. They're worshiping the demiurge. And
you've been reading.
I don't read anything. I haven't read.
I thought you've been reading. So I read reading Infinite Jest.
I read Infinite Jest, and then I read Incurable Graphomania. But before that, the longest thing I had read in 6 months before that was an instruction label. Yeah.
Amazing.
But yeah,
I'm happy to be your audiobook, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And then we've been, but like you catch me, like I've been caught several times in the last week not even knowing the name of the guy who wrote this book, and you're like, are you memeing? And I'm like, no, I'm really not.
Oh, good old
FBI informant says read Harry Potter next.
Who the fuck is Gary Allen?
Yeah, FBI informant says read Harry Potter next. I read Harry Potter when I was 19. I had the pig flu, the swine flu, and I was in college, and I read it. And also, this is another thing you all are generally wrong about, because the Harry Potter series was incredible. It was an incredible series.
Come on, the first part of it, like the literal first chapter of the first book, is a reasonable pastiche of Roald Dahl, and after that, it is all downhill. And I have read the whole series. Okay, that is the best book in terms of narrative.
No, the best one was Half-Blood Prince.
No, Order of the Phoenix is the best one in terms of narrative.
Both have them. But look
pretty dark.
Look at this.
Empire Strikes Back of the
I've got an MJ, a character by the name of MG says, "Come on, man," and really, I'm just sick and tired of you all, like, come on, Manning. Every actual, like, this is the way things go on Twitter. If I lie about things, you all like it. If I ever say anything that I actually believe, I get come on man into oblivion. And I'm just like, okay, I don't necessarily
think he was come on manning you.
He definitely was. I think he definitely was.
But I do the Harry Potter thing.
Yeah, and I do. It's just like, generally, I'm tired of playing this role that you all that you all actually don't like. Like, you all don't like me. You like the sort of wind up, sort of. You all like the sort of wind up caricature, vague neo-Nazi Sandbatch. But the actual me, you all don't like me very much.
Well, I like you. I like you, whose actual name is not Christopher Sandbatch.
Yeah, the Half-Blood Prince was Half-Blood Prince did this thing that's really difficult, which is to, like, in the middle of first of all, J.K. Rowling did something incredible that almost no fantasy series writer has ever managed to do since then, which is finish the story.
She did finish the story. That is true. That is honestly feather in her cap. She ended the series.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people would not have the courage to do so.
Well, it's a very difficult genre to finish something in, because just almost like, it's like,
well, it did have this one did sort of have a narrative structure. Like, even from the first book, you had to have a
I think that's the way it has to work. I think if you're going to write a fantasy series, what you have to do is, like, again, and if you all are writers who are still, like, if you're still listening to me after I fucking said I don't give a shit about your fucking neo-Nazi bullshit. The thing you have to do when you're writing is you have to write the ending first. Because if you don't,
well, she definitely didn't do that.
Yeah, I don't think she did. Yeah, no, because the ending is not good. But, like, this, like, if you're gonna write, you have to. it's much better to know how a story ends when you sit down to write it than to know how it begins, because you start writing and you start writing it. Like the example that I can think of that's sort of the best is Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time.
I fucking hate the Wheel of Time.
Yeah,
I loathe, abhor, and abominate the Wheel of Time.
Why?
Well, because it's a really shitty pastiche of Tolkien that adds nothing.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
It is terrible. It is the worst thing.
You're a Freemason, I think. See, look, there it is right there. It's like, okay, here we go. MG says, generally, what is it about millennials and Harry Potter? Okay, so so really, we actually don't have a critique of Harry Potter there. We have a critique of millennials, which doesn't really make sense. This is like, again, this is the inauthentic.
There is a completely real critique of millennials that we versus other culture versus other generations have a deeply unhealthy relationship with media properties, which coterminous and not our fault became like IP'd at the same time.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but like I'm not like a fanboy or anything. I read it. I read it.
No, it's fine. It's fine to like the thing. I think a lot of the criticism of millennials is that they don't just like the thing; they identify with the thing, and then have all of their things have to reflect an aspect of the thing.
This is a thing that I associate with Zoomers more than I do with millennials. Though the millennials do it, but like Zoomers, like they download a new personality every week. It's like, okay, it's White Boy Summer now, and then it's like, okay, it'll be some other like meme flavored like everyone
brown woman fall.
Yeah, I mean, and then like they'll do this thing where they're like, yeah, we're into racism or something like that, but then they'll have like a black friend or something like that, and I'm like, I don't understand. It's like, why would you like just go ahead and admit that you're a communist that doesn't want to, like, it's like, okay, yeah, what you actually are is a communist. And it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to pretend to be racist. You can be a communist. The communist is the mayor of New York City right now, or is going to be a mayor of New York City. You all are in good shape, But no, the black friend is also racist. I don't care. I'm from the South. It's like one of those things. I'm from the South. If you're racist, you don't hang out with black people. All of the black people in New Orleans are also racist. We don't hang out with them. It's like, this is not like, I don't do this like international brotherhood of racism. No, it's not. That's just the UN. Like you all just reinvented the UN with like gayer haircuts and less money. I can tell I'm in a bad mood. Like
you are in an amazingly bad mood. This is rare form. I want to do the super chat real quick.
Yeah.
Ambrose, thank you for the $20. I saw Half-Blood Prince at the dollar store today. His mom was wearing Cookie Monster pajama pants.
See, now there we go. Ambrose as a Southerner is a real damn racist. That is
he's died in the wool. He's great. Sparkling blue eyes too, gazing out of a craggy face. I would never appearance dox Ambrose, but
he's majestic.
He looks like you might expect.
He looks exactly how you expect. If you spend any time talking to him, he looks exactly how you anticipate he's going.
That's right. MG says, Zoomers will definitely beat you out in unhealthy relationships with media. Dudes will straight up marry AI anime waifus in the future. Have in the present, in fact.
Has it happened already?
Oh, yeah. And actually, the women are worse, as noted media commentator Catherine D has correctly pointed out, AI boyfriends are actually the killer application.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's 100% how it's going to go.
Catherine has never said anything that I disagree with.
She's incredibly insightful. If she ever focuses in on one topic and writes a book, it is going to be painting-esque.
I used to tell her that. I used to tell her she was going to write the best the best novel, and she just never does it. But like,
No, I don't even want her to write a novel. I want her to write a
Wendy
internet,
painting style book.
internet anthropology. Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, I wanted to write a 700-page internet anthropology book.
Yeah, I guess that can't be a novel. Like the alt-lit chatter recently. What was it all about? Like the great internet novel or whatever. And somebody
Gabe is so fucking correct here. She should write a Gamergate book for Passage. She actually should. She should. So many people say it should be Sargon, but I'm not convinced that he.
No, Sargon. So again, this is an example of the E-Write and bad taste. Sargon's not a good commentator. He's not a good writer. He's not really good at anything. You all just he's a media property that you all cottoned on to at a stage in your life and began identifying with. So he's like Sargon is like y'all's Harry Potter in a lot of ways.
The chosen one.
Yes. I don't have a problem with them. I don't have a problem with any of these people. It's they're what they are.
I was actually never a Gamergator. Like I was just completely checked out.
I wasn't either. I was already thoroughly involved in the alt-right at the time whenever that happened, and it didn't even because I don't play video games, so it didn't make any difference to me. But Catherine, as the Passage. Because it didn't take a shot at Passage Press, which is one of my favorite things to do. Catherine would be perfect to write a book for Passage Press because she's about as far away from the stated mission of Passage Press as she could possibly be. And Passage Press really liked getting as far away from their own stated mission as they possibly can. It's like we're going to start a publisher We're going to start a publisher to give young white guys who would get locked out of normal publishing a chance to break in or whatever, and then. But actually, we're actually just going to publish dead people and women and Jews. Literally every other publishing.
This criticism really is like the I found a dirty sharp under the park bench and I'm going to stick it into my own thigh. That is the no, you're right, and it's pretty damning. I am still a pay pig for them, but this
is weird. Like this is the segment. Have you ever seen that old Sesame Street meme where Bert and Ernie are recording or on the radio, and Bert is Bert is just sitting there looking horrified, and Ernie has his hand up and he's in Hitler pose, and it's it's like what we're doing. I'm just going to torch every bridge tonight. That's what I'm going to do. What woman is Passage published? What is that Peachy Keenan bitch? I think they're
no, they're not publishing her.
Are they not? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are.
Are they publishing her book? Why? She has a fucking deal with a regular publisher.
I thought they were the public. Catherine can get a public deal with a regular publisher.
Catherine can also get a deal with a regular publisher. Yeah. Anyway, Catherine D, very good. Would be an excellent commentator on internet anthropology. Sandbatch, are we doing the crash out or are we reading the book?
Yeah, we're gonna read the book, I think.
Okay. I will say
gonna read Gregory Allen's book.
Gary Allen.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm pretty sure part 2. I'm pretty sure Gary Allen had died by part 2, and so part 2 is written by Larry Abraham. We're not going to need the early life check on Lawrence Abraham, but Lawrence of Abraham. There was a development in the Library of Mass Destruction universe over the week. Wendy Painting PhD discovered our backlog, which is great. Very, very happy that she has found that after spending above 80 hours reading her book. And she wasn't even offended by all of the many times that we said very silly things about her in those episodes.
Well, to be fair, there's no evidence that she got to the point where I was trying to geolocate her via like name mentions of Austin bookstores. Like,
well, she's gonna get there because she was on. She made a comment on episode 26 on YouTube. So
was I on that one? Was I on that one?
Yes, she's in the Sandbatch series.
Oh man.
Now. Anyway, I spoke to her and asked her, and she is thinking of what the next book we're going to read is. She said that if she could come up with a suggestion that would be something we could do. So I would love to. I want to know what reading Wendy Painting assigns us. That is something to look forward to.
We're disproving death of the author here, by the way, because the author of the book has animated and is interacting with the show.
That's true. Yeah, we're so past death. Yeah, we're so past it. Right. Yeah.
If Gary North comes out of the grave and starts talking to us, though, I'm gonna have to go Van Helsing.
And I was about to correct you again to Gary Allen, but yes, of course, Gary North wrote the introduction to.
I knew Gary.
Yeah,
North.
I know you knew him. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so before Wendy Painting recommends Harry Potter,
I bet she does.
Damn. That'd be hilarious. Oh, I did specifically say, hey, do you have anything that you feel is sort of kindred to to Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, but preferably not about OKC. And
she was like,
I have never read anything not about OKC.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't know what you mean.
She gets excited, and then you add the not about OKC constraint, and like she gets visibly deflated.
just like there are other. There are other. Well, I mean, and obviously we do. She's gonna write another one. She's definitely working on it. Johnson, Necromancy of the Author is pretty good. I like Necromancy of the Author.
Yeah, that'll be a great Substack.
But yeah, so anyway, something to look forward to after we're done with Call It Conspiracy. And yeah, I guess with that we spent the first 22 minutes chitty chatting. And so I guess we can press on. Part 2, introduction to part 2. We're only doing introductions. The last week we spent the last 30 minutes of the show reading an introduction. So, introduction to part 2. The insiders are still inside. We've examined their new world order and why so many important men want to impose it on us. If it were for our own good, which is the best one can say of these plotters, does it really make any difference? In actuality, of course, it is a totalitarian world government which they seek, eventually. For their timetable has been slowed. Surely one might say this goal is too outrageous for general belief. So it is hoped by those doing the planning largely behind the scenes. Yet, as the conspirator Danton said during the French Revolution, audacity, more audacity, always audacity. It was audacious of them because at the end of None Dare Call It Conspiracy, they predicted that if people did not chain letter out copies of None Dare Call It Conspiracy to win all of the precincts, that by 1978, the Council on Foreign Relations would have instituted a one world government.
And again, doing exactly that was how Ronald Reagan was how movement conservatism. Well, that and the Watergate baby generation attempting a literal communist takeover in the late 1970s. But that strategy of like spreading the conspiracy literature around, like, solidified movement conservatism and put these people in the White House. So it worked.
It didn't not work. Yeah, that's right. A recent tactic of the conspirators is to claim that they cannot be so evil or involved in a furtive stratagem because their actions are not secret. No thanks to them. Exposure on a wide scale has hurt. So now they play down their influence and use ridicule as a weapon. Trilateral Commission chairman and founder David Rockefeller has told readers of the Wall Street Journal that he's not the Kabbalist in chief of a coterie of international conspirators with designs on ruling the world. Honest. He certainly would tell us if he were, wouldn't he? And Winston Lord, president of the Council on Foreign Relations, now says he welcomes being thought of as a conspiracy. It means people think we're more important than we are. Pseudo modesty.
That's dangerously close to inauthentic.
So your thesis here on being an anti-inauthenticist, which is a neologism I'm going to reuse several times, I think.
Yeah.
Being an anti-inauthenticist is essentially that all things are exactly as they appear.
Yes, everything is.
Nothing is judged on the basis of its similarity to another thing.
Yeah, C Sandbatch is a penniless incel with an 8,000 follower Twitter account. That's what he is. Like there is no man behind the curtain. That's what he is. The people, like, and the other thing, another example is like the people who make posts talking about how dangerous Twitter is, how dangerous sort of like screen sickness is and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah, I mean, it's fine, but like, this is a reality. It's a real thing. Like people really are the thing that they are online. There is no, like, to pretend that there's some sort of separation between the person and the poster is to give them a cop out. It's it's a persona. It's just a joke, bro. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. I mean, that's the shitbird that you are. That's the absolute shitbird, awful person that you are. You log so. What you do is, like you might have like a normal job or something like that. Yeah, you sign on during your lunch break, stand around the water cooler or some shit like that, and you cheer on the bombing of brown children. Because this entertains you. It's like that's the person you are.
Yeah.
It's not inauthentic. Yeah. It's not irony. It's anything. That's really the person
I voted for this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. I see what you're saying. Do you not think that people can have ulterior motives for things and sort of put forward a false front, which is yet another thing that might be considered a synonym for inauthentic?
And it's just another layer of the real.
So the false front is also a layer of the real?
Yes. Because like it's you. I mean, I don't. You authentically like it's. This is a phenotypic expression of your own malevolence. The mask is. You also created the mask.
Okay. So you're through the creation of the mask, you reveal something about the mask maker.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you end up reading Fed Book, by the way?
No, I haven't read it yet. Why is it?
I don't know. It'll probably mind break you given your present state. It actually covers a lot of what you're talking about. The mask becoming more real than the face.
Yeah, he and I think very similarly, which is probably horrifying to him. Sorry about that guy. Sorry about that dude. Yeah.
I will say that I don't. I have compartmentalized personalities. I will completely.
That's a talent. That's a talent of yours. You're good at it.
Wonderful. I appreciate your plaudits.
None of yours, as far as I know, are none of yours that I've encountered are legitimately malevolent though. So like that's like this is one reason I like you. You actually seem like a relatively wholesome person.
I do have a Chungus soul. It's true. I am ultimately a wife guy, family man, wannabe. So, anyway, that's what we get for pseudo modesty. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lawrence. The most powerful men in the Western world would have us think they are a lodge of oddfellows discussing their next civic project. The Oddfellows, if you don't know, was a basically Freemasons sort of Elks Lodge type of thing. It was like the Walmart version of that. The Oddfellows had like a bunch of like goofy symbology with very little undergirding it in terms of any semiotic value. So they still exist presently at in a much depleted form. But yeah.
See, I hate shooting the audience, but here, Cap's most compartmentalized personality is the one that redacts randos on Grindr as a hobby. See, you thought of that. You thought of that. That the material to form that comment emerged from the K lines inside your mind. You're telling me something about you when you say something like that. It's fascinating. I'm not saying you're a terrible person, but I am saying that's a really strange thing that's a really strange thing to have emerged from your mind.
He's thinking that there's some possibility that if he matches with a stranger on Grindr, it might be me.
Well, yeah, there is like.
What do you think my hobby is?
The impetus to download Grindr and talk to randoms is there. It's there in the data set of a person who says something like that. It's fascinating.
I mean, now that it has been said, this information has entered my psyche, and I would think that a lonely person who just needed someone to talk to, that is probably the easiest way to talk to a person, assuming you have no other standards to uphold.
Right. Assuming there are none.
Right?
Standards.
Am I wrong? Right? Like if you can't go on a heterosexual dating app to talk to somebody, could you?
Good Lord, no. I wouldn't.
No.
I got a Tinder match like a week ago. We went on like 3 dates, and she gave me the usual. She's like everything about you is great, but you don't seem to have any money. So I'm moving on. And I'm like, yeah, so you can't talk because women. The only thing women want is money. They literally don't care about anything except money. So if you have money, you can go on Tinder and just talk to people. But if you have money, you can go anywhere and talk to people.
I think ultimately you're gonna marry like a crust punk girl with like.
That's what this one was. No, this one was. She was a crust punk girl.
She was a crust punk who was pissed that you didn't have any money. That should be a bonus for her.
Yeah, I mean, like whatever. Yeah, she lived in South 7th Ward, had face tattoos, everything.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just at the absolute bottom of my game right now. Like this is like I'm like in a well of screaming pain that I didn't know humans could enter. But yeah, back to Gary.
30 minutes, page and a half. Yet these elitist power brokers still hold the reins, invisible or otherwise, of influence in America and other Western governments. Whether Republicans or Democrats are in office at the national level and or liberals or conservatives are our elected leaders. As George Orwell put it in his prophetic 1984, a ruling group is a ruling group so long as it can nominate its successors. The party is not concerned with perpetuating its blood, but with perpetuating itself. Who wields power is not important, provided the hierarchical structure remains always the same, which is why the Republicans ceased to exist in 2016, and the Democrats have been the political party since they successfully realigned themselves in 2008.
That's an interesting claim. Now, this is actually maybe the first really interesting political theory claim that any of these books have made, which is that the ability to nominate your successor as guarantee, as like measure of legitimacy. That's legit.
Well, not a measure of legitimacy, but as it's not a measure of legitimacy. It's a measure of, are you in fact in power? Are you sovereign?
Of authenticity? Yeah. It's a measure of authenticity. Is the ruling group authentically the ruling group?
Okay, fair enough. We're going formalism. All right.
I am a formalist. So I am a formalist, but that is I don't think I've ever heard.
This is another sense in which the Call It Conspiracy series has prefigured Moldbug.
Well, I mean, Moldbug has definitely read this shit. He's definitely read this shit. But that's an interesting claim. I've never seen that anywhere before. Somebody will probably hop in the chat and be like, "Oh, it's just Carl Schmitt." But again, Carl Schmitt is yet another thing that none of y'all get right, and he doesn't ever say anything like that. So, but yeah, that's an interesting and maybe uniquely American claim. Very cool.
Yeah. I didn't notice this before, but all of chat is people is our strongest soldiers admitting to installing Grindr to talk to people. So
Like I said, it's in the data set. It's
I was too correct. Okay.
It's there.
Oh boy. Let's see. Randall Shirker. I'm almost caught up to live, so I just want to ask Sandbatch what information we can glean from the fact that you gave us the information to psyop women into becoming e-girls. That's a good one.
I have to parse that for a second. So just when I said what information we can glean,
so he was referencing the fact.
I'm very good. In fact, I've actually passed I've actually, my inbox was exploding with e-girls when I deleted, and I even passed a couple off to other dudes because I know I don't have enough money for them anymore. They'll talk to me and they'll farm attention from me, and they'll do everything. They'll do everything right up to the point, but it's like I don't have enough money to go see them anymore. So you can build your own e-girl. It's easy. Just find a woman online, and really actually all you have to do with e-girls is be a person to them, and they won't
that works with regular girls too.
It doesn't because regular girls can immediately tell if you have money or not, and they only care about money ultimately. But it's like giving them a piece of cheese,
I think you might be overreading your own financial status as a limiting factor in your love life. And maybe this is an expression of your other anxieties bleeding into this thing, but
it might be.
I think that it legitimately that is not the only metric. Tons of women will go for, the charming penniless whoever for whatever period of time.
Yeah, it works for about a week. Yeah, about a week to 2 months is usually what you can.
Well, when my wife met me, I was dirt ass poor for the first 3 years.
Yeah, in hindsight, I'm actually just not. I'm actually a bad person, and I think that people can tell that I'm a bad person. Anyway, back to the story.
Oh, Lord. But Orwell also said that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. If that is granted, all else follows. Calling the conspirators out at their game has not yet broken their hold on our free institutions. They would not give up by default, but while there is liberty, there is hope and reason to resist those who seek power. Once they are flushed into the open, they will be fair game. Meanwhile, back to our story, eerily echoing what you just said.
I told you that works for these people. I have some of their mannerisms.
Nixon, Ford, Rockefeller, Carter, Reagan, Ronnie Reagan, the Nixon encore and cancellation. Interesting.
Oh man,
use of the term cancellation.
That is interesting. That may be the first. That phrase was coined right here. Definitely, that phrase was coined right here. That's it. Right here.
Is that what the engram says?
It's got to be. No, but the engram won't be able to.
It would be impossible to distinguish. Yeah. That's right. John Ewalt, I now tune in because Sandbatch has more undeserved pain than I do. Keep on keeping on, sir.
No, there's no such thing as undeserved pain. Okay, undeserved pain is the same thing as inauthenticity.
Are you a Calvinist?
Yes, I am a turbo Calvinist.
Turbo Calvinist. You crashed out on Catholicism.
No, I don't think being Catholic or anything has really anything to do with Calvin. But Calvin is manifestly correct about everything, and it is true that good people get good things. Bad people get bad things. Their manifestation of themselves in the world is a measure of how good they are. And I I have done something metaphysically, cosmically evil.
You think Elon is the best person?
Yes. He is.
Oh my God! All right. Okay. All right.
This
is very fun. Okay.
Have you ever seen that documentary about that Christian group that puts on the National Prayer Breakfast called The Family?
No, I have not seen that one. I know they're kind of a cult.
it's a really, I mean, they might be a cult or something like that, but they're a Christian group, and they evangelize using only the 4 gospels. Okay, so like and they pass it out as it's called the Word of Jesus. They 2 things that they said that are really fascinating. Reading of the Book of Job, I cry. I cannot read. Okay, the Book of Job. Oh, you don't want to get into me. And the Book of Job keeps me awake more than 10 nights a year. The Book of Job it's very fraught with me. But anyway, back to the family. They made 2 comments one time. They made two comments. One of them was, there's that line in the Bible about ministering to the lamb and the wolf, and they said, well, who it's easy to minister to the lamb, but who has to go minister to the wolf? That's another thing. And then there's another section where
wolves are probably better company.
They almost certainly are. But there's another section where one of the pastors in this group, they were just tossing a football around, and it was just, why King David was according to all of the written rules, King David was a cocksucker. He was a bad person. He did lots of bad things.
Sure was.
But he was God's favorite.
He did just love the little guy. That's right.
And that's you can't rationalize the justice of God.
Well, also Solomon, allegedly the most devout and wisest of the line of David, through just about risked it all for to clap them cheeks, right? The whole see Bathsheba, and it's like, all right, we're doing it. Sounds great.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like, what goodness actually is not knowable to us as mortals. We only understand goodness by what we see. It's whatever it is Elon's done, he's God's favorite. God has smiled upon Elon Musk.
Hey, maybe it really is just the be fruitful and multiply thing, and as long as you do that, God's like, you know what? We're gonna find out that if we started giving strangers foot baths, all good would come to us.
Yeah,
there's gonna be some sort of one weird trick. God loves it. Dude loves foot baths. Why don't we do foot baths anymore?
Yeah. I didn't know people didn't know I was a Calvinist. I'm like a real Calvinist too.
It's clearly pretty deeply embedded in your psyche.
I genuinely believe that I am cursed, that I am a member of the reprobate faction, and that nothing that I do will lift me out of it. That I'm going to be tormented on this earth until I die, and I'm going to burn.
You just about you started this by talking about fantasy books. You should definitely read R. Scott Baker's The Prince of Nothing series, and it would not do you any favors in given your present interpretation.
Yeah, but read it anyway. It's
very good. It's very good. It's very good, but I don't know. I think that maybe this series has exposed you to some psychological technology that you have not well withstood.
No, well, that may be true, but no, I mean, I'm somewhat envious of you all who can find a kinder interpretation of God than I can. I wish I was one of y'all.
Plant some flowers, man.
Oh, I did, and my neighbor sprayed them dead.
Fucking goddamn it!
Yeah, I did.
Oh goddamn! Happiest Sandbatch episode so far. Life is your Lucy, and you are the Charlie Brown. But you gotta keep going for the football.
Yeah.
The national elections of 1972 could have proved a watershed for the Republican Party. That they were not can be attributed to the deliberate strategy of Richard Nixon and his re-election campaign. Nixon's overwhelming victory gave him 520 electoral votes to 17 for South Dakota Radical Senator George McGovern of the Council of Foreign Relations. The largest margin since FDR's 1936 win over Alf Landon. That was history, the forgotten Alf Landon?
This is like very classic E-Right. This is like, there's like Ron Unz has like a 36,000 word article about the Alf Landon election. Moldbug also has like gone in depth on the Alf Landon election. We're well inside the E-Right, the proto E-Right, sort of framework here.
I just don't think that President Alf.
That's what I always think too. I'm like, did you really think we were going to have a President Alf?
Yeah, it's like, that's why Salmon P. Chase was the head of the Supreme Court instead of being an executive, because the guy's name was Salmon.
Yeah, President Salmon. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, the P also stood for like Providence. No, Portland. I don't want to say Providence. Yeah, Portland. Salmon Portland Chase. What a fucking stupid ass name.
It'll get you on the $10,000 bill.
It'll get you on the $10,000 bill. That's right. Yeah. Also a person who is, obviously he's in the history books, but generally forgotten in common parlance because he has such a ridiculous name.
Yeah, he was a serious player in politics.
Yeah, it was a big deal
for a long time.
Yep. It was a personal victory for Nixon, but brought few Republicans in on the coattails of the standard bearer. As Gary Allen and I pointed out, even before it was known who would be the Democratic nominee, Nixon will again talk conservatively, while the CFR's Democrat candidate will sound frighteningly radical in order to stampede you into accepting Nixon as the lesser of two evils. Of course, Gary Allen and Larry Abraham predicted that Nixon would squeak out a victory.
Yeah, that was their. But again, they're showing the signs of like they hate Nixon more than they hate anything else. Like they
super fucking hate Nixon.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Portland Salmon sounds like a parody of a pirate, says Gabe. It also sounds like a minor league baseball team.
Oh, that's so true. Oh my God, the Portland Salmon. Vulpes, Columbia River Salmon Ladder. That's who was the first son of Salmon P. Chase? Columbia River Salmon Ladder.
If I ever have a kid, I'm gonna name him Hanger Eagle, so he has no choice except to be a pilot.
To be a pilot, you have to be a pilot.
Yeah,
you're just gonna train him. You're gonna train him from an early age to
put little aviator glasses on him.
Yeah, little aviator glasses and like a perfectly trimmed push broom mustache.
Yes.
It's like a fucking excellent pilot mustache.
Yes.
I know a pilot who has that exact mustache. It is fantastic. He's getting a little old and he's going salt and pepper just on his temples. And I'm like, dude, what is going on?
He's got it.
How is this happening? Yeah, I know. It slays endlessly.
I was gonna say, I was like, women just take their clothes off when he walks into the room.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's like 35. He'll probably get married to a 21-year-old when he's 40.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what's going to happen. Anyway, will sound frighteningly with a ticket headed by a pragmatic centrist, as Richard Nixon termed himself to the Los Angeles Times in June of literally 1984. The landslide could not honestly be called a conservative win either. A man such as McGovern, who would have crawled on his belly to Hanoi, was simply not acceptable to the American people, regardless of the unpopularity of the Vietnam War. There is something that's like really repulsive about red state commies. Like
was it a red state then though?
South Dakota?
Yeah, because actually South Dakota is like
rural. Okay, maybe I don't actually even mean red state. I mean rural.
Yeah, no, rural,
there's something deeply sick about a person who can like live in an essentially rusticated place and think what we need here is communism.
Yeah,
like,
Javier's right. Javier's the Hicklib.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And like, I mean, I am kind of a liberal, but I'm not a Hicklib because like I don't possess the social pathology of the Hicklib. Hicklib is a social pathology, is what it is. It like requires a very strange outlook on the world to become one. You know, and it is sort of diseased. Like it's like gonna have to be. to become a Hicklib, you have to grow up in a place that is like mostly conservative or mostly a red state, like, you know, kind of like out like Dave Green or whatever. Dave Green is like sort of like the manifestation of a blue state conservative. Well, like this, you know,
I mean he's just a libertarian.
Is he? I haven't listened to him in like 8
Dave
years.
Green,
Yeah.
or sorry, not Dave Green. Dave Smith. Yeah, Dave Smith, the comedian. Yeah, he's just a libertarian.
Yeah, no, also about the distributors. Like he's like he talks about this all the time. Like, you know, he's a red state, he's a blue state conservative.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I'm Canadian now.
Oh,
through the magic soil of Canada.
Right. But the pathology of the Hicklib is fascinating because the pathology of the Hicklib requires that the like sort of mainstream, the main thrust, the main cultural current of the place that you grew up has to be conservatism, which like a lot of E-right guys aren't even aware is a thing. Like one of the craziest, like I think there's some of the reasons you E-right motherfuckers are so have no chill is because you grew up in a blue state and you think it's like really transgressive to use like the N-word or something like that. To be a Hicklib, you have to almost grow up in a place where it's relatively common for people to like use the N-word. And so like their version of using the N-word is getting like you all performatively use the N-word, and their version of that is performatively not using the N-word. And actually the underlying politics don't have really much to do with it. Like most of y'all are actually communists, and most Hicklibs are actually every bit as libertarian as the people they're around.
Well, the whole Hicklib like Yellowstone format is.
Oh, I don't think that's really a Hicklib. That's like just
that's
like a boomer con, isn't it?
No, it's Hicklib. It's 100% Hicklib because
when I think like, Hicklib, I'm thinking
well, I think that them, you know, them so and so's from Sudan might make as good of a cowboy as you or me. You know? like
when I think of like a Hicklib, I think of like the drive-by truckers or like the ideal like image of the Hicklib. And then like sort of like Theo Von and I are sort of very similar. No, it's not my therapy for myself. I'm right about so many things.
This whole show is talk therapy for Sandbatch.
When you start trying to discount my takes as self-therapy, you have to remember all the other things that I'm right about and consider that maybe I'm right about this as well.
Well, but the other thing is that based on your previous statement here in contra inauthenticity,
yeah,
even if it was therapy for yourself, it would be a true, even if, and perhaps more so if it was.
You're on it now. Yeah, you're on it now.
It would be more. You're
absolutely on
true.
It now. Yeah. That's we're on it now. Okay, so.
Okay.
I
see where you're going. I'm not sure that I agree with you, but I'm putting together the system of belief here.
Yeah. But see, here's like an example of somebody that could have gone that way but didn't, and he's experienced quite a bit of windfall from this because he came along culturally at the right time. Is Theo Von. Theo Von and I grew up so close to one another that I used to see him at the gas station. Okay, so like he and I are like so culturally similar to one another. He could have turned Hicklib. Like it makes sense for him. It makes sense for him to be a Hicklib, but he's not. The one trick that he did was not turn on the people. Like he doesn't have the resentment pathology. Hicklibs have resentment pathology. Like they reflexively react against like the status quo of the place that they're from. And Hicklib's what they're talking about here. You know, that's what you're talking about. That's the rural communist.
Yeah, the rural communist, quite repulsive.
Von Sandbatch. I don't get that one. What is that one? C. Van Woodward. I guess it's okay.
Theo Von. Yeah. They also said earlier that the C actually stands for Calvin.
Yeah,
Christopher.
It's funny.
Actually, you probably should go with that.
What did you think? What did you think, Nick? What did you think my incessant retweeting of Nick Land meant? Memes? You thought it was funny?
Memes? Vibes? You know? Yeah. I kind of think it meant vibes. But one of the reasons why Nick Land is so excellent is because he is a supreme vibe poster, but also has like real esoteric and insightful takes.
Yeah.
So, that few people, especially people in his generation, are capable of walking that particular line.
Yeah, so MG says Theo Von has like garbage men and other blue collar guys on his podcast. You can't be a hick lib unless you just test people like that. That's absolutely true.
That makes total sense.
No, it's literally absolutely true.
Yeah.
Now you can be a hick lib and have blue collar guys on your podcast, but it's always going to come off as really patronizing. It doesn't come off with patronizing with Theo Von because he doesn't hate them. Like I was in the store the other day and there was like one of these like New Orleans transplants here, and the cashier was black. And this was the night after Juneteenth, and the liberal transplant motherfucker was trying to.
I just think it's so awful what they did. I don't even know why I'm putting.
It was worse. No, it was worse than that.
I just think it's so awful what they did to you people.
It was almost worse than that because he like looks at her and makes eye contact, and he like stammers "Happy Juneteenth." Yes.
He just spills his spaghetti.
Yes. And she looked at me. And I had to like look away so we wouldn't both start laughing. It was so embarrassing. Randall Scherger says, didn't Nick Land write a lot of his shit while high on speed? Yes.
Hold on. According to the present present Sandbatch authenticity meter, that would actually increase the level.
Yes, it does.
There you go.
Yes, yeah. I read all of German philosophy high on speed. I understand German philosophy better.
All of it. You've unified the system of German philosophy. What is the quote? He's unifying the system of German idealism.
Complete the system. I completed the system of German idealism high on speed.
It turns out it was the amphetamines.
And I hate German philosophy now. Like, yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Nixon's opening for his new majority were almost always to the left, appeasing the same liberals who would eventually bring him down. Even after the 1968 win, Nixon showed this inclination. Theodore White of the Council on Foreign Relations describes the new chief executive thusly: in the making of the president, they're putting in CFR like Stormfronters would put in 3 ellipses.
Yeah,
like it's very funny.
They're not. It's sort of interesting. You can see the beginning of the right wing. I mean, I know it's like trendy for you all to be like, oh, read Carl Schmitt and everything like that, but the right wing has been like read Carl Schmitt since the mid '80s. Actually, and like you can see, this is the misreading of the friend enemy distinction is emerging right here.
He sought to have Hubert Humphrey, his defeated rival, speak for the United States in the UN. Humphrey turned him down. He sought, as a gesture of bipartisan unity, to appoint Democratic Senator Henry Jackson as his Secretary of Defense. Jackson turned him down. He sought David Rockefeller as either Secretary of Defense or the Treasury. David Rockefeller turned him down. He sought William Scranton as his Secretary of State. Scranton turned him down. The big men would not join him. It seemed that whatever concessions Nixon would make, he could not be accepted fully by the liberal establishment. But there can be little doubt that Mr. Nixon betrayed the conservatives who supported and elected him. The politicians of the left recognize this. Consider a letter written in February 11, 1972, by chairman of the Socialist Party, Michael Harrington, to fellow socialists. Speaking of the new movement of collectivist innovations in the United States for national economic planning, vast federal investments and government intervention in the economy, all of which were being initiated by the shrewder members of the establishment, Richard Nixon, David Rockefeller, Henry Ford among them. Socialist Harrington continued, Richard Nixon's new economic policy is only the tip of the iceberg. I will leave it to the John Birch Society to note paranoiacally that it bears the same label as V.I. Lenin's own adventure in state capitalism. The president has, to be sure, embraced the concept of a full employment budget, a delicate Republican euphemism for deficit financing, and has even adopted price and wage controls.
Hold on. Javier Oliva says, did you think you mastered German philosophy because you were tripping balls? I wasn't tripping balls. I was on what would be considered a turbo Adderall. But To introduce a new possible feature for LMD, you sneed me a super chat with the most complicated ass question about German philosophy you can, and I will satisfy you.
Do it. 20 bucks.
Open floor. Sneed super chat question about German philosophy. I will make Athenian Stranger look like he's playing in the minor leagues.
$20. He's going to explain Hegel in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. After quoting from speeches proving his point, Harrington concluded, I suppose that as a longtime democratic socialist, I should be enthusiastic about this belated Republican recognition of one of the most fundamental of Marxian truths, that the essentially social means of production constituted by our independent technology requires a social model of production, i.e. conscious planning and control. In part, I am, but I am also concerned because this Marxist truth is being championed by businessmen who hardly have socialist goals in mind. The confused Michael Harrington resigned his leadership position with the Socialist Party, Democratic Socialist Federation, in October of 1972, charging that most of the honchos in that party look with enthusiasm upon a Nixon victory. All of which seems to prove the assertion of Richard W. Whalen in Catch the Falling Flag that Nixon would preempt any position the Democrats might take in order to improve his chances of being reelected. As Whalen saw it, we Republicans, while temporarily enjoying governing power, have contented ourselves with overseeing a government we do not truly control, one that is moving by blind momentus further and further away from our party's distinctive beliefs. This is all uniparty kvetching.
Right, yeah.
Like
FBI informant asked, do I even read Heidegger? I read Being in Time. You actually don't really need to read Being in Time, interesting enough, to understand Heidegger, because he spent the rest of his life walking Being in Time back slowly. If you want to read Heidegger, you can really pick up with like Ground of History, late Heidegger. There's a great essay where he's asking what the use of poetry is probably the best single essay that Heidegger explained himself in, and it's only like 6 or 7 pages. It's very close to Endgame Heidegger before he like crashes out and converts to Catholicism, which I tried and it didn't work for me. Oh well.
Yeah.
But yeah. Back to the story.
A pragmatist must necessarily get elected in the existing political climate, but Nixon dragged that general opinion to the left when it was not even necessary. This was exactly the grievance made by principled conservative Republican Ohio Congressman John Ashbrook in a speech to his colleagues on December 15th, 1971. In the case of Red China, to take the obvious instance, there was little or no pressure in this administration to pursue a course of appeasement. To the extent that the American people had any settled notions on the issue, they were decidedly the reverse. President Nixon's own course of action, however, has perceptibly softened U.S. feeling towards Red China. Thus, rather than the president being pushed left by political pressure, the procedure has been exactly the opposite. He has gone left and created pressure on public opinion to follow him.
So John Ashbrook is an interesting figure. Okay, he's an Ohio congressman.
Crazy V-taper. Yeah, like wings.
He's a what's the guy wrote Johnny? I used to
Johnny Can't Read.
Yeah, I used to work for him. What was his name? Oh my God. Like very near the end of his life. I can't think of his damn name. Now. But that guy worked for John Ashbrook, and I have to look up his name now because the mantra guy. Why Johnny can't think. Yeah, there it is. America's Professor Priesthood. Bob Whitaker. God damn, sorry.
Wow.
It's only one copy is available on Amazon. You should go get it, read it. Bob Whitaker. He's the guy that came up with the mantra, which is like white now. I can't remember because my brain's fried at this point. My brain is totally fucking fried at this point. But anyway,
I bet you haven't slept in 5 days.
It's been a long time since I've slept. Yeah. But I actually don't do drugs either, by the way. Because I don't have enough money to do drugs. I'm like this au natural. But the interesting thing about Ashbrook and Whitaker is that Bob Whitaker is probably one of the most brilliant minds the conservative movement is. He was who was Sam Francis? He was Sam Francis's mentor. So like most of Sam Francis's material.
Hold on, what book were you talking about in terms of Bob Whitaker?
Why Johnny Can't Think. It was just the name. It was a book he wrote. And I had to use it. I had to use the name of a book he wrote to get his name because I couldn't remember his name. But Whitaker was probably he's like turbo autist. Like he was from sort of storied, not even a storied, but like a millbilly family in South Carolina that was sort of kind of famous for inbreeding a little bit. And he had all of the tics of a family that has been inbreeding for too many generations. So he was like, he was a very difficult person to be around unless he really liked you. But even then, he had strange tics. Like he would stick his hands all the way in the front pockets of his coat jackets, and like his arms would be like straight out, and you could see his hands, like his fingers like totally extended, and like the jacket would be taut whenever he would talk, and he wouldn't make eye contact very well. But he was brilliant. He was one of the most brilliant people I have ever met. He worked for Senator Ashbrook. I mean, he worked for John Ashbrook, and that was the thing that he did in politics. And Ashbrook died under very strange circumstances in a helicopter crash whenever he was on the campaign trail. And Whitaker like insisted that there was like conspiracy around this, and nobody ever really believed him, or if they believed him, they just they never pressed it. But he never really recovered from that. He was he had special needs that had to be accommodated for, but he never really recovered from Ashbrook dying. And and that's probably really is like Sam Francis was the character that like really learned from him and did and carried the work that he did forward. But yeah, wasn't expecting Ashbrook content here. But yeah, keep going.
That's kind of like the who was on the Warren Commission who died in a fucking plane crash in the Arctic.
Yeah. No, it's not autism. It's inbreeding. It's just, why do you all think everything? Not everything is autism. Not everything is
autism is the disease of our time.
I'm not autistic. I'm crazy. Okay, this is don't medicalize me. I'm just a fucking weirdo.
Don't medicalize me, bro.
Yeah. You know who tries to do that shit? Women try to do that. They try to come up with what the condition is that makes you this way. I'm like, no, I'm not autistic. No. I mean, oh my fucking God.
What esoteric gentlemen do is try to come up with the semiotic portfolio that is
read Nick Land
in this. Yeah.
Read Nick Land on schizophrenia. Like, yeah, it's his essay circuitries. It's brilliant. It's just like that's the correct explanation for schizophrenia.
I honestly, it's kind of, if you are a philosopher, especially if you're a philosopher who touches on things like, epistemology, right? In general, you need to deal with the schizophrenia question, right? Like you need to write the schizophrenia, your schizophrenia take, in order to be taken seriously. It's like if you're a chef, you need to cook a fried egg to be taken fucking seriously. That's the schizophrenia essay.
See, look at this Golba Inquisition face tattoo. Shoot, this batch has lost some of my respect. I don't give a flying fuck about your respect. If the cute girl has a face tattoo, I'm not going to blame some shit. I'm not going to blame her for some shit she did 10 years ago. I was like fuck. I don't really care. I like y'all. You all have done way more. Most of you all think and do more things that offend me than a woman with a face tattoo does. I don't lose respect for y'all for that. Y'all are who you are. I like it. Anyway, no, this book wasn't written in 2004.
That might be your most liberal take.
What? Yeah, no, it is. I'm a liberal. Let's face it.
When he's saying this book was written in 2004, he's talking about Johnny Can't Think.
No, it wasn't. Well, it might have been written in.
It was published in 2004. I just bought it.
Yeah.
I just looked up the full history on it. So.
Yeah. I was gonna say it might have been. It's a pretty old. It's like that's pretty old now. But yeah, no, he didn't write books earlier in his life because he was a
congressman.
He was writing for he was doing political messaging. He worked with Lee Atwater, with Carter Run, with Jesse Helms, and when you do that sort of thing, you don't really when you do that sort of thing, you don't really have a lot of freedom to go write books, because it's all like it's all contained inside the sort of inside the message. Hale Boggs is the Warren Commission guy. That was Hale Boggs. Wasn't Hale Boggs from Louisiana?
No. So hold on. There were two guys on the Warren Commission who died in that plane crash. There were multiple people who died in that plane crash. Yeah, he was killed. Yeah, Hale Boggs was killed with Nick Begich.
Yeah, Hale Boggs was from. I think he was from Long Beach, Mississippi. He was the last, may have been the last white guy that was the representative from the district that I live in. Is like, yeah, he was the Speaker of the House from, and he was from I think Louisiana too. He would have been my congressman back in the day.
The Begich family, actually, I think that we covered this with Hudson. Actually, I think the Begich family also has like a history of, I guess, conspiratorial and like interesting kinds of people. So, in any case, let's see. Which is why John Ashbrook took the president for the Republican nomination in 1972 without any real hope or money, to show that not all the party were pushovers. The Ohioan, a staunch anti-totalitarian who later died under mysterious circumstances, told columnist Willard Edwards, "The heart of my problem is that the conservative Republicans like Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan have allowed the president to move to the left with impunity. They are literally guilty of appeasement of a president in power. They gave him a free ride. This amazed me. I always thought it was the liberals who were soft and wishy-washy. They accepted from a Republican president what they would have denounced from a Democratic president: a deficit spending spree, Keynesian economics, a guaranteed income fantasy, a breakthrough with communist leaders." Yes, publicly perceived anti-communist Nixon got along just fine with the communist powers that be, and vice versa. Many socialist officials, said Newsweek for July 17, 1972, seem to be rooting for Mr. Nixon. Said one, "We know him and have just dealt with him successfully." And a Soviet diplomat, recalling Mr. Nixon's anti-communist image, noted, "The agreements we reach with him cannot be suspect among the people of America."
Hold on, Sugar. It says, keep in mind, this is referring again to Hale Boggs. No wreck was found. The aircraft CLT not required back then was seemingly removed from the aircraft based on a witness statement to the NTSB. Yeah, I am a believer that Hale Boggs was that was there's no way that was.
They were disappeared for sure.
Yeah, they were, and Ashbrook I think also was. Yeah, I mean, Ashbrook was definitely disappeared.
The rewriting of history, according to Political Fashion, is not reserved to the 1984 world of George Orwell. The 18th volume of the Great Soviet Encyclopedia is a case in point. As reported by Associated Press in 1975, Soviets who consult their most authoritative reference book of guidance on how to judge Richard M. Nixon will find a sympathetic portrayal of the former president as a realist who reduced American imperialism and turned towards détente. The people of America are one thing. We may even think we are sovereign. But, formalism. But establishment insiders view elections and agreements as but one step in their plan for a new world order. And the establishment has its lackeys willing to cut down to size all those who might step out of line, or to dispense discipline as an example of the power held by the unelected elite. In the election of 1972, after perhaps 10 million social conservatives were effectively disenfranchised by the bullets from a would-be assassin of Alabama Governor George Wallace, Richard Nixon received some 47 million popular votes compared to 29 million for George McGovern. On the other hand, the elitists in the media's Eastern establishment were voting 81% for McGovern, but 19% for Nixon. The media hatchet men would get their pound of Nixon flesh one way or the other, even if it took years.
I am not going to lie. I like Call It Conspiracy way more than None Dare Call It Conspiracy. They're letting the freak flag fly.
I honestly, maybe Larry was the hand behind the power the whole time.
Yeah. Well, what can we jamie up Gary Allen? Was he a member of the Council on Foreign Relations?
He was a member of the CFR the whole time.
Bad taste in women. I actually don't have bad taste in women, but I was engaged one time to what you all would call a good woman, and she couldn't make me stop hating myself, and she started pulling her hair out, so I let her not have to marry me. And so now I stick to women who are as evil as I am. So there's the story there. I hope y'all are happy.
All right. It was especially distressing for Gary Allen and me to watch the Wallace campaign come to an end, particularly after we had delivered to the governor a speech written at his request that was about to blow the lid off the CFR, Richard Nixon and George McGovern. 2 days later, on the afternoon of the evening when the speech was to be delivered, the Wallace campaign came to a tragic end. Another favorite in the uninterrupted series of coincidences that the picture painters would have us believe is that all presidential assassins from 1965 on are loners, crazy, and never part of a conspiracy. What makes this coincidence so choice is that this explanation of assassins is only applied to American presidents or presidential candidates, but does not apply to politicians elsewhere in the world. Very, very true. Except for John Hinckley. John Hinckley is the only one, plausibly the only one.
And he seems like a great guy. Actually, I was I listened to his music. I listened to him talk. I'm like, he seems like not really a bad guy, actually. But
the one that I think is completely above board, and the public narrative is exactly the truth, is John Hinckley Jr.
And to their credit, the court seems to have said, all right, yeah, just go make your country songs and your weird little paintings, and maybe. I
mean, he was in prison for 40 years.
Yeah, and then maybe shit post on Twitter. There's a market for that now. We think you're rehabilitated, but now he just says now he just talks about everybody loving everybody. He's literally me.
40 years for attempted murder seems fine, and he did his time.
Yeah, I actually kind of agree with that. But wait, just to drag back to George Wallace, they're going hard on the George Wallace thing, and I think George Wallace to me is one of, and again, remember I used to work with these guys, but George Wallace to me is the hinge of late 20th century American politics. He gets cast, and who wrote a good Substack on him? John Slaughter wrote a good Substack on him recently. Y'all should go read. George Wallace is an interesting figure who's like the fact, and he was shot. Nobody ever brings up that George Wallace was shot in 1972 when he was mounting a very, even Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail points out, he liked, you wouldn't think Hunter Thompson has anything good to say about George Wallace at all, but he's strangely drawn to George Wallace and favorably covers George Wallace, especially compared to Richard Nixon. And it's fascinating that Wallace was shot and nobody ever really says anything about that. The only thing you ever hear about George Wallace is the segregation now, segregation forever. No, George Wallace was not really a popular. Well, I don't know if you mean, because if you pull
Randall Shirker says George Wallace basically a populist candidate no matter the situation.
You use capital P populist, and I think that's true. He was a genuine capital P populist. My politics are essentially those of George Wallace. I think he was brilliant. I think he was, and not in a homespun hillbilly way or anything like that. I think he was incredibly sophisticated and one of the most impressive American politicians of the 20th century. And the dimensional reduction of him to this guy who's standing on the standing on the steps of the Alabama Capitol shouting about segregation, I think is one of the nastiest de-dimensionalizations that has happened in America, because he was a very interesting figure. Y'all should go subscribe to John Slaughter S. I think, what's he call it? Letters from the Old South.
And by de-dimensionalization, what you mean is that you're taking a fully featured human and reducing them to a single image or soundbite, or
it's always
you are a cardboard cutout. You get a segregation now, segregation forever. You get 4 words, and that's a man's life's work.
Yeah, and I mean, but people before he was the governor, he was an Alabama Supreme Court justice that forced opposition lawyers. He forced lawyers to refer to black men and women by sir and ma'am in court. He would do a lot. He has a very interesting set of positions. In terms of economic policy, he's the reason. Like, people ask me sometimes, why is Alabama in such better shape economically than Mississippi is? Because they're very similar states. It's because George Wallace was an actually brilliant governor who he saw the writing on the wall and did things like snatch a lot of federal contracts to build U.S. naval facilities and things like that in Alabama, and to really boost Alabama's iron production, and so there's a steel industry in Alabama, which sort of results in them getting these NASA contracts for Huntsville. He's one of there's a couple of these late 20th century Southern American politicians. Jesse Helms is another one. The other one was a senator from Alabama whose name I can't remember. They were much slicker, much more impressive people than their public image leads you to believe they are.
Yeah.
And and for most of that, by the way, I blame the Claremont Institute. Fuck the Claremont Institute.
Really?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Interesting.
I'm in Claremont Institute group chats, to where I was until I deleted Twitter, and I keep waiting on the hammer to come down on me, because I'm in their group chats. I hate them. I hate the more,
the more. Is black so base a hue? Yes. Oh my God. All right. Let's see here. It was especially distressing. Oh, sorry. Meanwhile, Nixon was still currying favor with the left. His re-election mandate, reported Associated Press right after the 1972 results, prompted him to proceed with delicate negotiations aimed at weaving a new fabric of world order from divergent interests of friend and foe. Men who don't differentiate from friend from foe are useful to world government proponents, as Richard Nixon knew from his days of open support of the United World Federalists. Are we going to talk about climbing into the Schmidt pit?
I think I've already done it.
You're just gonna let that go with a little nod and a wink. Okay.
The spirit of malevolence has left my body, and I've sort of collapsed back in my chair.
You're spent. You're soaking in your own juices. Soaking, sodden in his own hateful juices. Sandbatch sits limp.
Round, he throws his baleful eyes. Yeah.
An old self-styled Cold Warrior syndicated columnist, John Chamberlain, who is certainly no conspiracy theorist, looked with some misgivings on the shape of the peace to come. So it must go throughout the world if the era of negotiations is not disrupted by unforeseen accident or contingency. The Cold War will continue in a muted sort of way as the East and West maneuver stealthily to win the allegiance of the third world countries and to compete on the oceans. But the romantic days of opposition to communism are no more. Even Castro, an abscess to him, will get off the hook. The new watchword will be accommodation. Nixon hopes to build trade relations with the Soviets that will make for a situation which neither Washington nor Moscow can afford to disrupt. When Soviet natural gas begins to move through pipes to Tidewater for shipment to the West, the Kremlin will no longer be able to afford open war. And when those Boeing 707s go to Red China, Peking's continuing need for spare parts and new engines will be a powerful argument for maintaining a diplomatic status quo. My, how the turntables, as far as that last point goes.
You want to hear? I guess I can use this story now because again, I worked with these people. Okay, and I was told a story by a man who was with Richard Nixon whenever they in one of the very important trips that they took to China, and he was an American professor. He was a Georgetown professor. That's getting really close to doxing him. He was a professor. He was a sinologist,
He was a professor of bro science. All right, go on.
Yeah. He was a sinologist, and he'd written one of the early books on Red China and the Great Leap Forward and everything. And he told me it was very near his death, and he was telling me the stories like whenever he got off the plane in China and they were escorted down, he's like, China's not communist the way Russia is. It's just China with the communist. So they kept like a lot of the court ritual.
They did a Chinese reskin, but they already had a religious bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so like in the middle of all this pomp and circumstance or whatever, he's taken aside by some Chinese professors of America, and there's like, they're like, oh yes. They're like, oh yes, Mr. Professor. So we read your book.
Oh
yeah. We read your book. And like I said, so he said, yeah, your estimate of number of people dead, 15 million, 20 million. And then he says, like, pause and look at him. He says, it's not 15 million. It's 150 million.
Very low. Very low.
Yes. Man.
That's cool. I mean, yeah. I don't know what it must be like for, I don't know. What is it like for an East Asian dissident right now? I mean, I suppose we know some of them. I suppose we know some of them, but you'll
Australian.
You'll never know. Oh, the magic soil of Australia. No, I mean, obviously, I would never denigrate our Hapa brethren.
Yeah, but the wild thing is like Sam Austin, he's on on Twitter. Sometimes he'll like somebody will say some comment about China. He'll be like, the fucking crazy thing is that like because this comment appears on Twitter, like 10 agents embedded in China were rounded up and shot summarily, and we're never going to know anything about them. It's totally fucking true. Like you don't know what the fuck happens over there. And like anybody who says they've been to China and they do know, they don't. They're just they've midwit. It's important for them to think that they understand China so they can have the requisite confidence they need to go operate in China. But nobody understands China. Like it's impenetrable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a completely. It is a society who deliberately excised religion from itself. In a
thousands of years ago.
Yeah. There were wars about it. Yeah, look up the Yellow Turban War. It was the last gasp of religion.
China used to
Yellow
not
Turban
be
Rebellion. Sorry.
I mean, I'm not a Nipponophile by any means. Like, and China used to, that's the right word, isn't it? Nipponophile.
Sinophile would be for
no.
China.
I'm talking about Japan.
Oh, we say weeaboo now.
Okay, no, I'm refused. And but China, paradoxically, had never been interesting to me, and it has in the last couple of years. China has started to interest me on its own terms, mostly because of the Tang Dynasty. But like China is starting to get really interesting.
Tang Dynasty.
I don't know why. Yeah.
All right. I mean, obviously, Japan is the United States' greatest ally, and they're the ones that I actually care about. So.
They actually are too. Japan actually probably is America's best ally.
Yeah. No, it actually no joke, probably is. So we are not so great for them though.
That's true.
Let's see. Let's see. The open invasion of Afghanistan with U.S. built military vehicles taking part proved Chamberlain's assertion to be wrong. dead wrong. What is not discussed much these days is that the U.S. taxpayers' money and U.S. Corps of Engineers, who work side by side with Soviet technicians, that constructed the modern highway that stretches from the Soviet border to the Khyber Pass. This highway was described as a reliable, all-weather route linking Vietnam, that was a Freudian slip right there, linking Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia to the Far East to Iraq in Southwest Asia. This describing Iraq as being in Southwest Asia, while obviously true, is definitely not what you would say nowadays.
Yeah.
This fact was revealed in a professional engineering magazine, the Engineering News Record, November 3rd, 1966.
What a magazine.
In a story, rugged Afghan road jobs fill gaps in Trans-Asian network. Boy, rugged Afghan road jobs fill gaps in Trans-Asian network is also something that would mean a very different thing nowadays.
That's my new Tinder bio. I'm updating it right now.
You're looking for a rugged Afghan road job to fill some gaps in the Trans-Asian network.
Yeah.
Wait,
no, hold on. The name of that magazine. What was the name of that magazine?
Engineering News Record.
That is such a beautiful name for a magazine.
It was after the Engineering News and Engineering Record, were merged.
They merged. But,
this
is like one of the, everybody talks about like what happened to the literary man, what happened to the novel reading man, so on forth. The disappearance of that magazine is what happened.
It might exist.
Well, they're not as prominent. Like
fair enough.
Kurt Vonnegut. Who's that other guy that won that Shadow and Claw? Gene Wolfe. Yeah, all of those guys, like their day job was writing for trade.
Oh yeah, and they would read engineering. So
that's where all the jobs for writers went. There used to be shitloads of these trade magazines that they merged into one another, and now it's just Indian people. It's just Indian people fucking making AI blogs on medium.com.
Oh my God. And me. It certainly did. 13 years later, Soviet tanks filled the rugged Afghan road. The article continues, the last remaining sections of the 22-foot wide, 647-mile highway from Kabul through Kandahar to Herat, a route once traveled by Marco Polo, Alexander the Great, and Genghis Khan, will be completed in 1967 under Soviet and U.S. bilateral aid programs.
Love it.
John W. Von Millers, who is leading the UN survey team in Afghanistan, says it is the most expensive bit of road he has ever seen. We built the road. We supplied the trucks. It's a wonder that the State Department didn't ask for volunteers to help the Russians fight the Afghan patriots. Those daring Mujahideen freedom fighters that we'll never have to worry about again.
I read Haji Murat before I read, and it was like the third time I'd read Haji Murat, and before I read it, and it's so beautiful. It is, if you're one of those people who still thinks Dostoevsky is better than Leo Tolstoy, you should go read Haji Murat. You should get drunk and read Haji Murat. But I have to reclaim Johnson after I referred to him as someone with sort of like urges to get on Grindr and talk to men. That was kind of mean. He makes a really good point here, which is that Duginists would refer to Iraq as Southwest Asia. It's a subtle claim of the Middle East on the Russian sphere of influence. In fact, that's true. And this character's use of that Southwest Asia, that is
I refer to Japan as Far East Europe.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. The Southwest Asia thing, that is an indication that someone like graduated from Georgetown or Stanford or somewhere like that. They went to school in a time when Russian imperialism, the Russian sphere of influence was the primary concern of American foreign policy. So it's an interesting artifact to insert. Is that Southwest Asia thing? It's exactly what that is. That's an artifact of Eurasianism.
An interesting artifact to insert on the rugged Afghan road. Fill gaps in Trans-Asian network.
Yarrow Emperor.
What's good for the communists is not necessarily good for the conservatives in the GOP. Opportunity for conservatives in the Republican Party went by the board. In mid-November of 1972, Kevin Phillips of King Features Syndicate commented that in order to maximize the president's own vote, the White House ignored other GOP candidates, set up a sabotage apparatus, and ran a non-campaign designed to avoid confrontation and muzzle the several scandals popping up. Meanwhile, congressional Republicans, getting no help from the White House, were the ones obliged to handle questions about the administration's ITT, Watergate, and wheat deal episodes. As a result, a lot of voters simply stayed home. The percentage of eligible voters casting ballots dropped from the 61% of 4 years earlier to 56% in 1972.
Think about that. Think about what the eligible voter turnout is reported at now.
Ugh.
What
Yeah.
did we hit in 2024? They claimed 90% or something like that. Some just insanely high number.
Yeah. All right. The 2024 presidential election. Let's see. Voter turnout. No, it was 64%.
That's it.
Yep.
I thought, well, okay, yeah. So this is gonna be like, they claimed very high turnout.
They said it was 60. They said it was 66% in 2020.
Yeah,
and approximately 60% in 2016.
Differentially though, I think the number gets really high, like in Wisconsin and Minnesota. I think it got.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that now, because of just game theory,
Right.
Yeah, just because of game theory, there's, all of the efforts are expended on swing states. So you have so many people to convince that what was it? Like Hillary Clinton literally never went to like 10 states or something in 2016.
Yeah.
Literally didn't go. And so it's interesting. Whereas and also actually, you could say from, again, a game theoretical perspective, that is fucking wrong, like a bad strategy. Actually,
it didn't work for her.
Well, it didn't work for her, but also it's might be a good strategy for you personally to win that time, right? To maximize your efforts in the places that you consider to be in play. But what it doesn't fucking do is give you any ground game in the states that you completely ignore. Like, you don't have a network of volunteers. You don't have people who you can use. You're not building coalitions at all.
Right.
And so in the future, it gets fucking harder, which is why in 2024, when Trump campaigned in literally every state, virtually every precinct shifted red.
Yeah.
Like, the super hard saturation campaign, and the
thing about the game,
it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for the Democrats to make up for that, unless they do more things like the No Kings protest, which specifically did that even in all areas. So
right. Yeah. The thing about game theory that's fascinating is that it's called game theory because you're essentially choosing which dimensions to prioritize and which not. That's kind of you're choosing which aspects of the game you're min-maxing, and you can game theory your way into some really bad decisions, like not
for sure,
not anticipating sort of like feedback mechanisms in precincts that look at you not visiting other precincts and, mimetically understand that this means they don't care about you either.
And also obviously, games are typically viewed as something with a temporal endpoint, whereas politics does not have an endpoint. Like, you can't seize power and prevent the other side from. You can prevent, well, maybe not the specific other side, but you can't prevent your adversaries from ever coming to power again necessarily, right? Like, there's no such thing as a final victory. You are here forever. Like, that's how it works. So, yeah. In any case, the scandal of Watergate alone, from its onset in June of 1972, changed many things. It convinced some skeptics, even eventually, that there were such things as conspiracies, even coming out of the White House. It also postponed, at the very least, a potential realignment which might have put conservatives in the driver's seat nationally instead of being treated as so much baggage. Political scientist Kevin Phillips offered this analysis in Post-Conservative America. Without the strategic, moral, and turnout depressant of Watergate, Richard Nixon would have beaten George McGovern with a record majority of 63 to 65% of the total vote, instead of just under 61%. Big swing. And the better side of Nixon might have emerged in such a campaign, we now have a firmer appreciation of how ready the public was for an articulate, populist-tinged conservatism. Likewise, instead of losing 2 Senate seats net, the GOP could well have added 1 to 4, climbing to a total of 45 to 48. And in the House of Representatives, the gain might have been 20 to 30 seats instead of just 12, to near controlling levels that could have fueled at least a dozen party switches in 1973, most by Southerners. Organization of Congress might have well passed the GOP or a conservative coalition. So Watergate did have real consequences. In the beginning, it seemed so paltry, and in hindsight, the episode is nothing more than a tiny blemish on the body politic. When men later linked to the White House were caught during a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington's Watergate Hotel complex, the local police called the FBI, a Democratic Party official, and the acting police chief. The chief subsequently recalled that no one knew the significance of the arrests early that morning. He said that the Democratic official who came into police headquarters, Deputy Chairman Stanley Gregg, speculated that it will be a good thing if we can blame it on the Republicans, but we had nothing here, and we don't talk important things over the telephone. We take a walk. Little wonder it now seems sure that Democrats had advance warning of the Republican espionage attempt. That wasn't widely reported on network television. It might have spoiled the drama before the hanging at the behest of the jury of reporters. Nevertheless, it was reported in Victor Lasky's It Didn't Start with Watergate and Fred Thompson's At That Point in Time. Mr. Thompson was chief minority counsel of the Irving Committee, the special committee created to investigate Watergate. White House Chief of Staff H.R. Haldeman concurred in his book The Ends of Power that the break-in effort collapsed because the Democratic Party was ready for it. They knew it was going to happen and let it happen. And the CIA monitored the burglars throughout. Finally, the break-in was deliberately sabotaged. That's kind of a weird phrase to say the break-in was deliberately sabotaged.
Yeah.
But
all right. If you try to talk to me, I've got to get water, so I'll be back in like 10 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, one funny thing about Watergate in general is that, all the people who broke in ended up getting sinecures in Con Inc. media. So it seems like it was a media op from the beginning. Just, throwing that one out there. First, however, the scandal needs to be put in perspective. Did Nixon lie? Of course. But as Victor Lasky remarked in the aforementioned summary of presidential misdeeds, Franklin Delano Roosevelt lied about not getting involved in foreign wars. Eisenhower lied about the U-2 flight. Kennedy lied about the Bay of Pigs, and Johnson lied about Vietnam. And in each of those cases, far more was at stake than a third-rate burglary. Or as the slogan had it at the time, no one died at the Watergate. Presidential espionage for political purposes is hardly a scandal. It is commonplace. Looking back, even Teddy White admitted the clumsy break-in at Democratic headquarters was technically criminal, but of no uglier morality than the spying at Barry Goldwater's headquarters, which Howard Hunt of the CIA had supervised for Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Their penchant for wiretapping must certainly have been stimulated by the wiretapping authorized by Johnson against the Nixon campaign of 1968. Their little early illegalities must have come naturally. Also, I mean, they're in, what was it? In 2015, the Obama campaign wiretapped the Trump. It was, so nothing.
Wiretapping's
nothing
classic.
New.
Wiretapping's
so classic. You don't even need to wiretap anymore. You don't need to tap wires. You just control the entire infrastructure of the cell signals. Yeah. Oh man.
I can tell you've been talking to Wendy.
Shawnee Mack. Main legacy of Watergate is that every good scandal gets a gate suffix now. It's so true. Yeah. It's so true. That is how that is that it's an interesting modification to English, right? Gate never meant that shit before. It's never it didn't mean that in Watergate either. It's just that you had a word, water, obviously, that was, clearly subdivisible from gate, and now we're able to just slam gate onto the back of anything. Why don't we, it could have been water. We could have done like water X, right? But people don't like people don't like prefixes. So the other really funny one is everything is some kind of cell now because of
I hate it. I hate it.
And that's an even weirder one. And it's an even weirder one because it's like a collapsed portmanteau of involuntary and celibate.
Yeah, it's like
so it's the first syllable.
Got laid 5 days ago, and like Gabe is like he's on his incel arc now, and I'm like, that's again, it's proof that word doesn't mean anything.
Are you saying that word is inauthentic?
Yeah, it's like that is the I mean it's not. It does mean something, but it's like, what is the complex of the meaning? And when I see it, it drives me insane. I have so many before I gave up on like the mental poison seeping through Twitter.
Sandbatch heaven is like verbal specificity.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's what it, like, again, I even was talking about, like, somebody was asking me how I got into writing poetry. I was like, I figured out when I was like 8 that the only thing that calms me down is arranging words in very specific, sort of meaning shapes. And when I there was like something else that was like today where I was, somebody in my Telegram chat. This is somebody in my Telegram chat. I can go back and read it because it's not that long ago. But this is like my response to it is, where is he? He's probably in here right now. But he's like, I read read a thread today. Read a thread today that said I was dehydrated, and I'm like, how did the thread know you were dehydrated? That's the level of verbal specificity I require from the world. I'm like, no, did you read a thread that made you think you might be dehydrated, or did the thread know you were dehydrated?
Well, you could have started the thread with the linguistic flair. You are dehydrated.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's how I imagine.
Here's how to prove it.
There's a cartoon Russian monkey like going, you are dehydrated. At the start of the thread, fuck.
Be more efficient worker by drink water. Water is cheap beverage.
You people with your jobs and your money and your happy marriages, fuck you. Get better at language, But go ahead. Sorry.
It's like the Glenn Ross. Oh, you want to be good at, like, you want to be a good family? You want to be a good father? Fuck you. Go play with your kids. Everyone else. Everyone else gets specific with language. Oh man, I like I like neologisms for specificity. It's okay to do that.
Look, Penultimo, I want to be autistic. If I was autistic, I could get on disability and I would be able to eat food. I've been tested for autism so many fucking ways, and I keep failing the test.
Failing the test.
Yeah.
Oh God. That's bleak.
See, but an autistic person would not.
I'm not socially retarded.
Yeah, an autistic person would not be able to do the synthesis that I just did there.
That's true. It's true. You do have a theory of mind for other people. Tragically.
Yes. Yeah, and I have too much of a theory of mind for other people. The way other people's minds work fascinates me. I think
you might have the social schizophrenia version of autism. Like you have the opposite side. You have an excess of mental theory for others.
Yeah, no, I mean,
let's describe this pathology here.
An e-girl after fucking me once said, like, literally hadn't put her clothes back on yet after fucking me. She said, I really like that you've integrated your anima so thoroughly. And I let her get away with it. But the truth is, I haven't integrated my anima at all. I'm just trapped in a room with it.
You're not a wait. So you haven't integrated the feminine side of your psyche.
No.
Okay.
I'm trapped in an empty room with it though, and it has a knife.
Oh, hey, wait. Speaking of being trapped in a room with your anima, you lost the draft of Womb Cathonic when you deleted Twitter.
I did. Yeah, I lost
my
the draft. Well, I know I did. I also deleted that poetry manuscript. I deleted that too. It's gone. Everything is gone. I deleted
Why the fuck? Man,
I deleted if it's not on, and I almost deleted Substack, but I couldn't remember my password to delete it. Like I literally tried to delete I tried to delete Sandbatch entirely today. So yeah, there's no book coming anymore.
Two things. Number one, this is why Max Brod did not follow Kafka's wishes, right? You just have a bro who won't let you destroy your work. Like
I don't have anybody like that. I'm like down. I'm like in
New Orleans. Give me the keys next time.
I'm not writing anymore. I'm like out of the game entirely. Like this is it. It's like that. This is like the last couple of days. It's just been like everything you've done with your life is wrong. Like your reprobation is manifest in everything. Like your entire existence is throbbing pain. You have to do something different. And so, like, I guess I'm gonna go work at Taco Bell or some shit like that.
I know an excellent Australian short story writer by the name of Lewis Woolston, who works at Kentucky Fried Chicken and has written a series of short story collections about his time working
Sloppy
at
Joe Stalin is in the comments telling me don't let Humongous win, Sandy. Yet Sloppy Joe Stalin is also the person that when I said I'm in the worst mood of my life the other night, hopped in my Telegram chat and started trolling me. Like, this is like you people are the reason I'm like this right now. Actually, you're not.
You have also.
I'm the reason I'm like this. I am the cause of all of my pain. It's my evilness. It's my reprobation. It's me. I am the cause of everything bad that happens in my life. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, first, I disagree with your premise, but the problem. I mean, Randall Shirker, Sandbatch getting DDD'd. No, you're just doing the third one. You're doing the first and the third one. So this is what happens when you don't have anyone to depend on. Like you don't have any dependency.
I have never like that Bob Dylan song, Like a Roll. There's never been a time in my life whenever I've had anyone that I felt like I could trust. That's a real actual no shit confession. I've never really had a family. I've never really and I've not really ever been close. Like even when I've been in relationships with people, I very deeply assume that affection is only given to me so that it may be withheld later for blackmail or because that's what my mother did with me. Like I have no real. My mother's this very interesting person. She will seem normal. Everyone loves her, but me. Because she's kind of like Gone Girl with me, she's just like crazy, so like I have I live like this mirror life where like even whenever I would say things like about my mother, it's like she would like show up at the principal's office and she'd be perfect and she'd just get away with it, but then she'd be like at home like telling me things like having you destroyed my career and your father and I have tried so hard to turn you into something normal like a doctor or a lawyer and it's just not working and you're never going to be anything and everything you do has no value. And she would take my girlfriend when she would find out that I had like a girlfriend, she would take my girlfriend out to lunch and try to convince her to break up with me. And so yeah, it's like, and it's deep. I have no baseline trust of anyone to me. But this is why I like the DIY thing. I won't do anything unless I feel like I can do all of it. unless I can do every step of the project, because I am unable to trust someone else. That's so like, yeah. Why did I write a book of poems? Because I needed a book of poems to run a software suite that I developed on, and I didn't trust anyone else to help. So I had to go do the whole thing from scratch. Yeah, that's serious autotherapy right there.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, okay. I desperately want to be supportive here, Sam.
Yeah, no, you don't have to. No, you don't have to. It wouldn't make a dent. Wait, we're reading a book, not talking about me.
Well, ultimately, we're really like, we're sort of breaking ground here in terms of interview technique, where you read a book with someone and see what lines trigger them.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting new genre of media where, like, like one of my buddies, the OGC buddy, said it's a deep dive into the horrifying persona of C. Sandbatch with the read along.
With the read along, yeah, that's right. With you have a person who is generally happy dealing with
I don't even understand what happiness is, if you want to know the truth. Like, to my knowledge, I have felt happiness for about 15-20 seconds. I was sitting on South Congress in Austin on a very sunny morning in October of last year, and I felt something that I think was happiness for about 20 seconds, and then my father called me, and I made the mistake of answering the phone and obliterated. Obliterated it, like immediately obliterated it. And then I left the next day. When I was driving back to New Orleans, I got hit by a truck in Houston, slammed my face into the steering wheel at about 60 miles an hour.
Dear God.
Wait, serious. This was in October of last year. It was it was after the election, because I was driving home. It was like the day or two after the election.
Early November.
I had like serious turbo concussion. My father told me I was making it up, that I shouldn't go to the hospital, that it would just cost more money than I had, which is true. So I didn't go to the hospital. I wandered around in a daze for like 30 days, melted down on the woman I was dating at the time. She broke up with me. And that was the crash out back in November. If anybody remembers that one, it's because I had
because you had a traumatic brain injury.
Because I had a concussion and I was being gaslit by my family into thinking that I didn't. Yeah, that was like so.
Wow. Vulpes Persona, $20. Thank you very much. Somebody has to pay for therapy. Doing my part. We appreciate it.
Every time I go to a therapist, they end up fucking me.
Like actually, like proper fucking?
Yes.
Go to a male therapist. Or rather, don't go to a male therapist, I guess. That would be the worst case scenario.
I don't want that. That's like shit. That it wouldn't change. You know, I would just get fucked by a male therapist, which is Jesus.
You gotta psyop your psychs. That's what you gotta do.
I think that's why they fuck me.
You could solve the over licensing of therapists and counselors just by having sex with more of them, and then doing and then reporting them to their licensing boards.
Sure. Yes. Actually, the e-girls, yes, they are the only women that really understand me. Yeah, it's true. It's totally true. That's why I kind of like them. But But the thing is that women don't like men that they can understand. They actually don't. So it's actually the worst possible matchup for me.
I think it is actually true. I don't like being agreed with, and so my wife is a little bratty to me. We of course there's an undercurrent of love, respect, and understanding there, but and I am an enigma to her.
Slabby Joe Salen says you should try an AI therapist. If you remember, I tried an AI therapist and I ended up producing an elaborate MK Ultra report on myself.
Yeah, he sure did. He sure did that. He did that and then read it live on the show.
Read it live, and two separate e-girls tried to weaponize it against me. I let one of them do it, and the other one I didn't.
Penultimo says Cap's wife thinks he is just a regular Spurg online. She does not. She doesn't think I'm a Spurg at all, and I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not on the spectrum at all. I've done the test too, and passed it with flying colors.
The thing is,
no tism here.
If you ever meet me, it becomes apparent that I'm not autistic.
You're super duper not.
I hold eye contact. I make I have very high emotional. I can respond socially very well. I don't know. I'm just crazy. But yeah, go. Yeah, it didn't pass. I failed the autism test.
Came back as non-autistic.
This is a serious crash out. This is the crash out that I've needed for so long. But yeah,
I really this is healing. This is your healing crash out. I needed this. You're gonna light a candle and have a bath later. It's like this is what I needed. Actually, you know what? So Gun Limited Ammo earlier said, and I wanted to get to this. Are you saying that autists can't have theories of mind or what? Zoned out for a second. So what I am suggesting here is that autism is inherently not having a theory of mind for other people, which is like that as it was originally described, basically not being able to infer things or learn things from subtle social cues. The severely autistic people who are low functioning and need a lot of support and such literally cannot learn from other people because other people are pretty close to being like scenery. Like they categorize them as objects, rather than other humans with as much going on behind their eyeballs as you do. And so that's what causes them to be unable to, for example, learn language or, learn how to behave without a lot of like applied behavioral therapy.
No, it is possibly true that I go the other. I do go the other. I will sit there and be endlessly fascinated by another person's subjectivity, endlessly fascinated. But yeah. So they think everyone is a woman. See, there's the thing. I am fascinated by women's subjectivity. The idea, the experience of being a woman to me is fascinating, and not in like a tranny way. Like,
oh no,
to be this person who like every day wakes up with this like ebullient confidence in their own ability to do anything, but like the only thing preventing them from being raped hundreds of times on the subway is this like very thin agreement that we call civilization. Like the cognitive dissonance that it takes to go through life as a woman fascinates me.
Randall Shirker says, I guess the question is, how do we explain high functioning autists in this model? So first off, that's why it is called, what I just said is why it is called autism. They are automatic. They are autarkic, right? They don't have connection, right? And so it being reformatted as a spectrum rather than originally autism applied to people who were basically locked in, right? People who were physically fine but had no ability to learn socially. Right.
Is that really where it's from?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so like and they realize that, some people, if you could learn the way that you teach a dog, right, and they could build bonds with specific individuals, which generally would be their own mothers, and like it was possible for them to learn. Some of them, like when you get to sort of like the middle functional levels, could learn to communicate and do simple tasks with support. like if you've spoken to a person who has autism to the point where they're not able to like live on their own, but they also aren't like basically an animal, they'll do things like use strange phrases that they've picked up from movies all the time, but in ways that don't necessarily make sense.
Oh,
And so they'll repeat phrases constantly, and they're like trying to be friendly and charming, but it's because they've like learned the series of steps necessary to do this, to like interact with another person in a way that ends up being positive. And so it's kind of like that, you know, they don't know what the associations are with those words in the same way that you might.
Yeah.
Which is why people who are high functioning autists will still really prefer things that are highly predictable, right? So if you deal with someone say you deal with someone professionally who's a high functioning autist, if you provide them with prediction as to what is going on, then you are going to have more successful interactions with that person. So if you give an autist like a really good spreadsheet, they are going to like be positively disposed to all future interactions. But if you just try to like charm and schmooze them to smooth over some like rough portions of, say, a business deal or what have you, it's not going to work. You can't imply your way through a social interaction with an autist because they don't understand implication.
Yeah. That's actually, if we all want to medicalize me, actually, the condition that I'm most similar to is a psychopath. Actually, I have internal psychopathic tendencies, but I'm not malignant. So like it's like there's psychopaths all over the place that aren't like serial rapists and that sort of thing. I have like psychopathic tendencies.
I think I mean I don't actually think that I don't think personality disorders actually personality disorders don't exist except as like helpful except as helpful categorical tools. Some people are just assholes.
Yeah.
Autism is some sort of fundamental break in the ability to socialize.
Mm-hmm.
And so a person who would have the opposite of autism would actually, I mean, the antonym of being an autark is being social. So the opposite of an autist would technically be a socialist. So.
That's totally true, and that explains libertarians. That really does explain I always like the autistic tendency that I see in like the e-right and that sort of thing. I tend to think it is actually like sort of libertarian economics makes sense to them because it's like sort of about reducing the number of moving pieces and complications. And so like you eventually reduce everything down to a gold standard with a city that's run by a philosopher king and everyone else is a slave and they have to do what the philosopher king says. And there are no inefficiencies there. All the equations work out just fine. And theoretically, this could be a self-perpetuating machine out into eternity. And that's like a perfectly autistic like political theory to me. It's like it requires it's like what you're attempting to do is eliminate.
You can extrapolate from first principles.
Yeah. Yes. No, but let's see. Like here's the thing with me, for instance. Like some of these e-girls actually do fall in love with me, and then my self-destructive tendency is so strong that I will deconstruct their affection for me and explain to them why it's actually highly manipulative on my part for me to allow myself to be loved. And then I will slowly over the course of several weeks, as they attempt to stop me from doing what I'm very obviously doing, I will like dissect their personalities and leave them like a shattered wreck of a person for a few weeks. But usually then they pull themselves together and marry a very wealthy man in the near term. So like it works out well for them.
in the end.
Oh my Lord. All right. Hey, did you know that there's a book here?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, let's continue. I'm sure that we'll circle back on this. If not this
We'll
evening,
circle back on it.
We'll definitely circle back on it.
Well,
We'll end run it. We'll end run it even. Even secret agents have a conscience. The full Central Intelligence Agency involvement in Watergate may never be fully known. According to former White House aide Charles Colson, Nixon thought the agency was in on the plot up to their eyeballs. Ask yourself this one very important question. If the president of the United States doesn't control the CIA, and if it can work to unseat him, who does control it? One clue may lie in the fact that every CIA director, from its founder Allen Dulles right up to this very moment, has been and was before his appointment a longtime member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and that includes George H.W. Bush. Yeah.
So he's in the picture now. Like I remember, I feel in the
HW's in the picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Larry Abraham was way out over his fucking skis when H.W. Bush became president.
Yeah. Most autistic president, by the way, is super easy. It's Thomas Jefferson, who was literally autistic.
Yeah. Squealer John Dean, who revealed Alexander Butterfield's knowledge of the White House taping system, the latter gave details to the Irvin investigators, also commented in Blind Ambition how those with agency connections seem to come through the episode well. Speechwriter Raymond Price in With Nixon thought the CIA counterplot was in operation, and Howard Hunt believed James McCord set up the whole bungled affair and had the authorities alerted. In this vein, Kevin Phillips has observed that the CIA burned its relevant files almost immediately after Watergate, sending an agent to McCord's house to burn his too. Lucky he didn't burn the house.
Interesting. John Dean mentioned you know who John Dean is, don't you?
I don't know who John Dean is.
Dude, John Dean is the guy. He was the Watergate turncoat that like turned in and testified against everybody. And he's been like a turbo shitlib ever since then. Like, and he's still around. He's still around penning op-eds.
All these people are still around.
Yeah. Well, some of them are dead. I think Tex Colson's dead. Charles Colson's dead.
But like, okay, all of the ones who are still alive, they aren't doing nothing. They're all when you walked away to get a drink or whatever. All of them have like sinecures in the media.
Yeah, like John Dean, for instance. John Dean, I knew Donald Trump was going to win in 2016 because like days before the election, John Dean penned a New York Times op-ed against him. And I was like, well, John Dean's wrong about everything, so Donald Trump's definitely going to win. You know?
Amazing. So, dear reader, political conspiracies apparently do exist in the White House and from the White House against the White House. Don't believe plain old paranoid right-wingers. Believe, if you will, a paragon and dispenser of all that's worth knowing, the New York Times, which boasted in an editorial in June of 1973 that the Watergate scandal is a profoundly sinister event because in so many aspects it reflects an authoritarian turn of mind and a ready willingness on the part of those at the highest levels of government to subvert democratic values and practices. Mr. Nixon's guiding philosophy is that the ends justify the means. Watergate was a series of crimes and conspiracies against individual liberty, against the democratic electoral policy, against lawful government.
You know, the reason I think it's become so easy to rehabilitate Richard Nixon is because so much of the press surrounding him was
comically gay.
It was comically overblown, and it mirrors a lot of the contemporary media. I mean, really, the media, all of the playbook that it's sputtering on them now. But yeah, the narrative does change. It just hasn't changed since Watergate. Like we've been in the Watergate bubble since Watergate. And like with Richard Nixon, it was this person who they would say these things about, but it obviously didn't apply to him. Like it obviously didn't. Like Richard Nixon is like he's a very tragic figure, and because like the only thing Richard Nixon ever did wrong was not be able to not respond to them. So they could do this to Richard Nixon. They could catcall him, and he would go fucking nuts. And he would like, and he would build a list of media enemies and that sort. So they could make him superficially look like he was the thing that they said he was, even though he's actually exactly the opposite. He's really one of the most. There are not many people that really believed in the American system the way Richard Nixon did. And it's one of the reasons why he's easy to rehabilitate, even though like from a policy perspective, these guys are kind of right about it. From a policy perspective, he was almost a naive globalist. But yeah.
Well, I mean, so many were naive globalists, to be clear. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that is being a naive globalist is in fact the criticism of libertarians.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the criticism. You are a naive globalist. It would be libertarianism would work if everyone was white. Like it would work.
If everyone grew up in Orange County in the 1950s,
if we did eugenics first and made it so that everyone had an IQ of 105 and like high executive function, libertarianism would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we don't. So there we go. Let's see. Sorry. But the press is also capable of conspiring to bring down the elected government, blowing the horn to cause the crash of the wall, protecting even a president of the United States. While the Washington Post did its best or worst to poke sticks in the sores of Watergate, so too did the New York Times. Veteran journalist Russ Braley tabulated the latter's efforts in bad news. In the New York Times Index of 1973, Watergate covers 90 pages of fine print, equal to a normal book of more than 800 pages. Each index page lists about 38 stories, and during 3 months of the Irvin Committee hearings, many thousands of words were printed each day of testimony and documented text, so that the average story that year probably exceeded 1,000 words. At a minimum estimate, the Times published 3 million words on Watergate in 1973, or 30 books of 100,000 words each. The index of 1974 did it all over again, 89 pages of fine print. In early 1973, the last U.S. troops left Vietnam. It appeared that the war might be over, and the media revolution, like Hanoi, did not accept the outcome. As the Times had warned on June 4th, 1972, 2 weeks before the word Watergate surfaced in the press, there would be a hell of a lot to talk about impeachment if Nixon won re-election in 1972. Yeah. Oh my God, they framed Nixon. Did you?
What is that from?
Bill Murray went on.
Yes, it's got to be Bill Murray.
Yeah, he went on Joe Rogan recently, and he was talking about reading the book about John Belushi that was written by David Frost of the Watergate
of Frost
reporting.
Nixon,
of Frost Nixon, and so was that his first name? I'm not sure. Anyways, that Frost, Mr. Frost. So, and he read the book about John Belushi, and he was like, "This is complete bullshit. It's completely made up. Everything about it is bullshit." If they, he's like, John Belushi was my best friend. I knew everything about him. He was not a drug addict, and he was like, oh my God, they framed Nixon. So because this reporter, this living legend of journalism, put together such a blatantly fraudulent thing about a person with whom he was deeply familiar. He was like, wow, it's all bullshit, and like didn't have trouble saying that on one of the most important media properties currently in existence,
right?
And so I mean, and the funny thing is that from the perspective of Larry Abraham and this book called Conspiracy, what's happening here is just that like an asset's getting burned, right? So they're not pro Nixon, but they're also anti Watergate. And so they're just like they're like they're doing the I believe everyone in this story should die meme.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. Anyhow, so let's see. Who was governing, the president or the press? There surely was no love lost on either side. Also, the New York Times being framed as a formal sovereign in this, once again, another antecedent of Moldbug. There surely was no love lost on either side. Richard Nixon's watchword to this administration was literally, the press is the enemy. On the other hand, that avuncular establishment newsman Walter Cronkite charged on behalf of his colleagues that the Nixon team was conspiring to discredit and malign the media, which true enough. Okay. Like William Safire has worked on both sides of this street, in the Nixon White House and as a syndicated columnist who appears in the New York Times. Who else has worked on both sides of the street? Most of the people arrested for the Watergate burglary. Anyway, his comments are instructive. After Nixon won in 1972, after the enemy, the press, had not been only trounced but humiliated in Nixon's only landslide victory, after the press came back in 1973 and blazed at him for the Christmas bombing of Hanoi, and then when the bombing worked and forced a peace, refused to concede he had been right. After the angry president held the press's feet to the fire, glorying in his triumph, and embittered at the refusal of recognition of his victory over what he saw to be the powerful apostles of weakness, the cracks began to appear in the base of his edifice. Judge Sirica, Maximum John, the kind of hanging judge civil libertarians worry most about, need a few more of those, applied the awful pressure of lifetimes in jail for first offenses. First James McCord, then Jeb Magruder and Howard Hunt. The press, which had tried and failed to make Watergate the issue, came alive again and came up off the bloody sand swinging a mace. The same brand of hate, the same degree of hate, was now turned back on the president. At a garden party of all places, at Easter time in 1973, one editor of a powerful publication who hated Richard Nixon and undoubtedly did not celebrate Easter, with the same blind devotion as he had worshipped John Kennedy, told me there's got to be a bloodletting. Wow. Blood libel.
Blood libel.
Did the country really need a bloodletting? I wondered. Damn right, he said. Obviously, little of the bleeding would have been possible without leaks from the inside. In point of fact, many of the problems of the generic Watergate situation led back to the formation of the Special White House Investigating Unit, nicknamed the Plumbers, who were themselves supposed to stop the leaks. Here, the odor of conspiracy rises like a cloud, which would envelop the president and which reeked of the scent of Rockefeller and Nelson's man in the White House, Henry Kissinger. Henry had joined the Nixon team at Rockefeller's insistence, even after being quoted as saying that Nixon was unfit to be president and that he, Henry, would never work for him. Side note, undoubtedly, one of the most powerful men in the 20th century is John J. McCloy. In exercising this power, McCloy has served as chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations before David Rockefeller, one of only 3 chairmen of the CFR's 60-year history, and also as chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank before David Rockefeller. Harper's pointed out in a lengthy feature article of February 1983 that in 1956, when McCloy chaired a study of American-Soviet relations sponsored by the Council, he recruited for its staff a young Harvard scholar little known outside academia at the time. It was one of the first steps in Henry A. Kissinger's ascent into the foreign policy elite.
That man's name was Dr. Jolly West.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God.
They go together in my head in so many ways. Jolly West and Henry Kissinger for some reason.
Let's see. Now that I think about it, isn't the entire Watergate situation more or less the event that set the domino in motion that leads to the complete destruction of trust in journalists with Trump? Sort of. I mean, it's a little bit of a it's a little bit of a I don't know. I think that the Frost Nixon stuff is still generally regarded as a triumph of journalism. I think that's still held up as the gold standard of responsible journalism.
It might be the most entertaining journalism ever. It might be the apotheosis of journalism as infotainment. It's like a windmill that but it is true that like the Nixon treatment, the idea of the media as being permanently anti-conservative is a meme of the Nixon administration. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So that meme particularly, and saying the press is actually framing the press as the enemy explicitly, is definitely that's definitely a meme. And it's something that also kind of, I don't know, when was the last time? Well, actually, so I think you could easily say that every president, Nixon and later, other than Obama and Biden, would use that, because Clinton definitely did. Right?
Yeah.
And Clinton definitely did. Carter definitely did. I mean, and in Carter's case, definitely not wrong. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that that vein of American politics definitely starts then. Yeah. However, the thing that really, I think, started the total loss of faith in journalism is the rise of alternative media, like just the availability of other narratives. I mean, that's also why, society is theoretically more fractured, is just because we're not basically getting ear fucked with a single narrative every single day.
Yeah, more or less. It's like that's that's whenever I talk about the information structure of modernity. It's whenever I was. That's sort of when we say postmodern, we are referring to something that is after modern and
after modernism. Yes.
Yeah, and one of the hallmarks of modernity is a strong state apparatus with a strong centralized information dissemination system that, like, and when we're talking about, invisible dimensions of the state, narrativity is one of them. And I always talk about history, but history and narrativity are so, like, the diminishment of that sort of standardized narrativity is a hallmark of post-modernity. Like, we have left modernity behind, and we've like re-entered the fractured information world of, say, almost the medieval period.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in a situation where, I mean, narratives are being guided both by they're being guided by individuals. They're also being guided by sort of legacy power structures, and they're also being guided by essentially black boxes. Yeah, which is like just engagement algorithms is a black box in info feed, right? So it's not necessarily doing anything that is guided intentionally, although obviously there, you can put your thumb on the scale, but increasingly so now that AI is a little more sophisticated in terms of parsing things. But even from 2003, when Facebook launched, it has been the case that just engagement and this sort of like passive sorting of information has been a weird sort of type of signal. Yeah, that has disrupted the general narrative control.
Right. Postmodern. We live in the medieval world and this is why increasingly money is the only thing that matters with respect to women, because this is the return of the war all against all, and the only thing that matters is resources, and cash is the only actual resource now.
Cash is not a.
I have a
cash
totally.
Cash is not a resource.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
It is a thing that it converts into resources
It's
within certain. Hold on. It's a thing that converts into resources in certain contexts.
In certain contexts, but there is a perception. There is a very real perception of it as resource now, and that's
that's a map and territory problem. Cash is not a resource. Cash is not a resource. It is not food. It is not a raw material.
You're right.
Cash.
No, but it represents all of the things. It
represents all of the things in a certain context.
Again, so this is why I'm not even mad at women about it. I was like, yeah, if I was a woman too, the only thing I would care about is money because it represents everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see if it lasts. Gary Allen has rightly observed. Who the hell is Gary? Gary Allen has rightly
Gary
observed.
Allen.
Who the fuck is Gary Allen?
Gary Allen, the conspiracy theorist.
Gary Allen, the mystery author of a book that nobody's read. Yeah. Has rightly observed that the Watergate scandal really began with the plumbers who were virtually created by Kissinger of the Council on Foreign Relations, if you didn't realize. Nixon staffers John Dean and Charles Colson reported that Kissinger got Nixon so upset over leaks that the president decided at Kissinger's suggestion to set up the plumbers. According to Dean, it was Rockefeller who had Kissinger talk Nixon into forming the plumbers. Little did Nixon know that he was being trapped. God, Kissinger. You gotta respect that roly-poly Oli.
I do. I endlessly respect. Yeah. I respect him enough to genuinely hate him.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, actually,
I don't hate people that I don't respect. You know.
That's great. I'm upset that you don't hate me.
I like you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you respect me enough to hate me?
Okay, yeah. If I have an opinion about you at all, then I respect you. It's
wonderful. Oh yeah, no opinion. Ooh, brutal. Yeah. So presidents can be cornered like anybody else. There seems little doubt that both conspiracy and vested interest were intertwined here. H.R. Haldeman wrote, "My firm view is that many bureaucrats who knew that they would be fired or relocated by executive order, Congress would simply not provide the legislation, played a gleeful and decisive role in undoing the Nixon administration." Boy, this guy would have loved the first Trump administration. In 1973 and 1974, the federal government became a massive sieve in an orgy of self-preservation.
What a word! What a phrase!
That doesn't necessarily. Does that make sense?
But getting sieve and orgy again, like that's a very specific image that landed on me, you know.
Yeah,
so authentic.
Consider the damn it so authentic. Inauthenticist Christopher Sandbatch. Calvin Sandbatch.
Penultimo says he strives to be hated by the likes of Sandbatch. I would much rather like you. Do you
recall that Penultimo is why we're reading None Dare Call It Conspiracy and Call It Conspiracy?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot that's true. Yeah.
That's right. Yep. So let's see here. Consider the damning tapes. It is universally admitted that the Watergate story was never the same after the tapes and the details of what was on them was revealed. The Watergate Committee and Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox.
What a name.
were among those that had a field day once the tape's existence became publicized by Alexander Butterfield, a CIA informant. Previously, the tapes had been under control of the Secret Service. So it is very interesting to note that this account in Newsweek for September 23rd, 1974. While former White House Chief of Staff H.R. Haldeman awaits trial for his part in Watergate, the Secret Service chief he ousted from the White House last year has landed a plum job. Robert H. Taylor, 49, who tangled with Haldeman over Nixon security procedures, is now head of the private security forces for all the far-flung Rockefeller family enterprises. Did Nelson pay off to take down a political foe? It wouldn't have been the first time. Henry Kissinger was given a going-away gift of $50,000 when Rocky sent him to the Nixon administration. Nelson knew enough to not go down with a sinking ship, let alone a ship he was getting ready to sink. As Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater has revealed, Nixon told me shortly after his reelection that he'd offered Nelson Rockefeller the appointment as Secretary of Defense, and the governor had refused. Nelson Rockefeller wasn't a Secretary of Defense type anyhow. He and his family were architects of appeasement and accommodation with the major communist powers. And, well, obviously, your thesis here would be that he would have been a perfect Secretary of Defense for Nixon, right? Like, that's right.
They
Like
get really. This is like they get legitimately schizo about Nixon because like there's like if you notice there's simultaneously this deep-seated urge to simply attack the Watergate narrative, but also you have to do it without taking Nixon's side, you know, and like it leads them into some really strange place.
We have to hate all of them.
Yeah,
that's right. Oh. Excuse me.
That was two in a row.
That was a rough one. He wasn't a Secretary of Defense type anyway. He and his family were architects of appeasement and accommodation of the major communist powers. And let's get one thing perfectly clear. Nor was Richard Nixon, make no mistake, that supposed scourge of Hanoi. It cannot be said too often, for it has occurred again and again. Western, primarily American aid and trade have built up our communist enemy, which has then used that technology against us. It is a deadly game. Hear M. Stanton Evans. In May of 1972, President Nixon announced the blockade of Haiphong Harbor in North Vietnam, explaining that this step was necessary to protect American lives in Southeast Asia. There is, he said, only one way to stop the killings. That is to keep the weapons of war out of the hands of the international outlaws of Vietnam. In support of Nixon's action, the Department of Defense released a series of photographs portraying the influx of Soviet supplies into North Vietnam. One photo shows the Soviet cargo ship Mishurin steaming towards Haiphong with Soviet ZIL-130 cargo trucks and ZIL-555 dump trucks on deck. Others show Soviet T-34 and T-54 tanks, Soviet MiG-17s, and Soviet 122mm field guns, Dushkas, items that also turned up in the Middle East in the fall of 1973. All these instruments of aggression, as it happens, originated in the United States and other Western nations. The cargo ship Mishurin was so graphically exposed by the Department of Defense photo, is powered by a diesel engine designated and built in the United States and features a hull constructed in the United Kingdom, common enough for Soviet cargo runs to Haiphong since 1964. To Haiphong since 84 of the 96 ships identified making such runs are powered by Western engines. In like fashion, the GAZ trucks used on the Ho Chi Minh Trail come from the Ford-built Gorky plant. The ZIL trucks from yet another American-built factory. The T-74 and T-34 tanks have modified Chinese Christie suspensions. Christie was an American designer. The MiG-17 is powered by a British Rolls-Royce engine. The 122mm field gun and other Soviet weapons use a propellant technology provided the communists by American chemical firms. Olin Chemical, by the way, in case you were wondering. Yeah. Not only do we arm the Red War machine, we feed its troops and others in the Soviet bloc who suffer under the failure of socialism. In 1972, foreign policy expert Henry Kissinger. Okay, you do not need to scare quotes foreign policy expert for Henry Kissinger. He was a foreign policy expert.
He was a foreign policy expert. There is no doubt about that.
That's like, he was that. He was absolutely that. That was a real thing. Like, whether or not you agree with his motives or objectives or methods, he was an actual expert. He was maybe the best one ever. Certainly in the latter half of the 20th century in the United States. Kissinger worked out a deal with the Soviets after another crop failure. They needed 30.4 million metric tons of grain, and we supplied them with 19 million tons, about 1/4 of our total crop. In addition, the Commodity Credit Corporation extended $750 million in credit to the USSR for a 3-year period. They used $550 million at the low interest rate of 6 1/8%. Thus, the U.S. provided wheat, subsidized by the taxpayers at 47 cents a bushel, costing at least $800 million. That would be, line goes up, by the way. That would be, this is a great deal. It is a way to get rid of our excess grain crop. The price will rise, and the GDP will go up when we spend the money. We will also get a return on our investment from the Soviet Union and be able to leverage this into future trade. That's what he would have said. Trade analyst Miles Kostick reported that the sale of grain contributed to the highest round of food price increase. Oh, there we fucking go. Increases for the American consumer since 1947. With supplies short, the price of U.S. commodities jumped, followed by a 20.1% rise in retail prices during 1973. Henry Kissinger was subsequently made Secretary of State, and there can be little doubt of the Kremlin's satisfaction or the reasons for vodka toasts in Moscow. Soviet dictator Leonid Brezhnev plainly set forth the strategy to other Warsaw Pact leaders in the summer of 1973. The same summer that the New World Order gang in the Trilateral Commission was being organized by Kremlin traitor David Rockefeller, said Brezhnev, "We communists have got to string along with the capitalists for a while. We need their credits, their agriculture, their technology. But we are going to continue massive military programs, and by the middle 80s, we'll be in a position to return a much more aggressive foreign policy, designed to gain the upper hand in our relationship to the West." Détente with the Red Chinese was another step down the road to sell out of one more ally, this time the Free Republic of China on Taiwan. The longest journey, say the Chinese, begins with a single step. I don't know if that's a Chinese proverb. I feel like that's probably just something that's been applied goddamn everywhere. But anyway, such was the move embraced by the Shanghai Communique, which declared in part, "The United States acknowledges that all Chinese on either side of the Taiwan Strait maintain there is one China and that Taiwan is part of China. The United States government does not change this position. We also pledged to withdraw our forces from Taiwan." Senator Barry Goldwater, a friend of the nationalist government in Taipei, didn't want to believe we would betray our ally. He wanted to believe in the soothing words of Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, and must rue that day. As Goldwater later commented, "Whatever the true intentions of Richard Nixon in respect to Taiwan, the Chinese communique became the basis for President Carter's recognition of the Red Chinese government. Its existence provided Carter with an excuse to withdraw recognition of nationalist China and abrogate our mutual defense treaty. At the time, both Nixon and Kissinger assured me this would never happen. In December 1978, when Carter made his surprise announcement recognizing Red China and repudiating our defense treaty with Taiwan, both Nixon and Kissinger supported the Carter decision. I was in Taiwan for a few months after Carter withdrew diplomatic recognition of our loyal ally. In the course of discussing this dastardly turnabout, I found that the people remembered the event in much the same way that the American people remembered hearing the assassination of President Kennedy. They recalled exactly what they were doing and where they were when they first heard the shocking news.
Oh my God, I've been muted.
Have you now?
Yes.
I haven't been talking over you.
No. Well, I mean, yeah. I'm like, damn it. Oh, fuck. Oh well. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that.
They made Killinger a real life character. Yes, that's right. I'm Dr. Henry Killinger, and this is my magic murder bag.
I'm not actually as interested in him as some people are, though. So like, I do.
Oh, he's so much fun.
I've met him.
He's just an evil orb.
Yeah, I met him, and I was like, still like, again, I was floored by the reverence that everyone has for him. But I'm just like, yeah, Kissinger, huh?
Look, man, when you're the best, you're the best. That's how it is.
It's true. And he is like, he's dead now. See, look, there's Sloppy Joe Stalin. He has to follows me around. I have like a little Greek chorus of fact checkers. He's dead now. I know he's dead. I know he's
Sloppy
dead.
Joe Stalin. Hey, Sloppy Joe Stalin is one of my strongest soldiers.
And well, yeah, it's certainly not one of mine.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, he's one of your strongest subverters. Oh God. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, Johnson, Kissinger was net based. I'll die on this hill. The thing is that like everyone from from a few decades in the past, when compared to the present, is incredibly based. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Just because things are so fake and gay. Things are authentically fake and gay.
No, authentically fake and gay works. Fake works. Fake works. Inauthentic doesn't work. There are higher order linguistic distinctions between fake. Fake is not a negation of another word. Inauthentic is a negation of a word. It's to negate its realness. To say something is fake, something is both. You could be fake and real at the same time. It cannot be authentic and inauthentic at the same time. Inauthentic is something. If it is, then it is authentic. So inauthentic is an impossibility. It's a first order logical impossibility. Fake and real at the same time. That's two adjectives modifying one another. It's a sort of contradiction, but it's poetic.
Okay. Sloppy Joe Stalin sends $5 donation to the Not Trolling Sandbatch Fund.
You have to stop sending money. I'm going to send my head across the room as soon as the outro starts. Like the last thing I'm going to hear is Jolly West talking about totalist cults.
You have joined a totalist cult. Those who benefited from this duplicity, the Red Chinese leaders, were responsible for the deaths of upwards of 64 million of their own people, according to a Senate report issued in 1971. That's 2.5 times that number, right? The Nixon repudiation for anti-communism then became useful whenever negotiations with the Reds needed a disguise. This enabled the communist powers to become, or at least acquire, reputations as superpowers with whom to share power in the New World Order envisaged by the insiders. Consider the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT I, was ratified before Nixon's re-election in August of 1972, and the missile negotiations in 1973 and 74. The upshot and intent of all of this was to make us weaker and the Kremlin stronger. A member of the SALT I negotiating team described the talks, which started in 1969. The Soviet Union has continued the pace of both its quantitative and qualitative improvements over the full spectrum of weapons capabilities. The Soviets have carefully and deceptively negotiated provisions to accommodate the deployments originally programmed by them, and they have taken maximum advantage of every loophole and ambiguity in the agreements. Indeed, Soviet strategic advantages in many categories have widened throughout this period. At the same time, the Soviets successfully thwarted the U.S. strategic program of greatest concern to them, the more technically advanced U.S. ABM program. The Soviets have used the SALT negotiations process as a smokescreen to conceal their mounting strategic superiority from a complacent United States. It's a little funny because all of this, it turns out that the slow, erosive pressure of like American style consumerism did actually ultimately win this, but and you know what, that is a normie take that is true.
Normie takes are true way more often than people, and that's kind of sort of been the basis of Sandbatchism for the last 2 years. You all defeated it. The schizo take will always win online. I'm no longer going to try and sell you all on the idea that the normie take is usually actually closer
to the truth than the idea that nuclear weapons aren't real or something like that. But
Nukes are fucking that's a great schizo take. Nukes aren't real.
The classic schizo take. Yeah.
Classic schizo take.
Well, that would after it if I'm still alive after we do whatever Windy Paintings book is. I mean, I'm really going to press hard for the perestroika deception because I think you would love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Johnson says the normies are schizos now. Actually, a little bit. Actually, kind of true. Kind of true. That's part of the whole not having a single narrative pumped into your ears and eyes 24/7 anymore.
Oh, Deleuze has a great take on this, but it's 9:50 and introducing the concept of Deleuze is not what we do at 9:50.
Yeah.
Now Baudrillard, I hate Baudrillard, and I don't like. I generally don't like listening.
No. So what Sloppy Joe Stalin didn't write Baudrillard. He wrote Baudrillard. See, when you add that A in there, he becomes a Cajun.
He becomes a Confederate general. And I'm totally disarmed. Is what happened.
Amazing. Let's see. I wonder if this is our last. I wonder if this is our last page. Hey, Sneed those super chats. You still have time to get them in. We gotta buy Sandbatch some new socks, or else
I have no. It's interesting. I have no new sock. I have no socks that aren't like caked to nothing, and my only pair of boots now has holes in the soles, so like when it rains, my feet get wet. I'm dangerously close to becoming one of these like country music burnouts that I always was afraid I was going to be.
Start writing the lyrics, man.
I kind of do.
We got to get you in front of Sturgill Simpson so he can have another good album instead of the bullshit he's been making.
I can't stand him.
Yeah, well,
I'm more of a Charlie.
We were then. Hey, if you can't stand him, that means you respect him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I respect him in the sense that he sold out and he made money and he gets laid, which is making money and getting laid are the only two measures of success. So, like, he's successful.
We were then and still are following a theory, a mindset of CFR defeatists, such as former Defense Secretary Robert S. McNamara, called mutual assured destruction. This is why the SALT I anti-ballistic missile treaty has been aptly described by Phyllis Schlafly and the late Admiral Chester Ward. Phyllis Schlafly, crazy-based lady, of course, and the late Admiral Chester Ward. That agreement crowned more than a decade of dedicated efforts to keep the American people subject at all times to a Soviet genocidal nuclear attack. It is difficult to believe, but the U.S. SALT delegation rejoiced that they had ensured that the American people could be killed by the scores of millions. So help us God, despite their coy manner, they are serious. They really believe they converted the Soviet SALT delegates to the same immoral insanity. These were some of the disturbing and real reasons for the American people to be concerned, not about the antics of Watergate, which so monopolized the news. Moreover, the double standard about the relatively minor Watergate wrongdoing in the Nixon White House was maddening to those who remembered how, for instance, 3 of those pompous senators on the inquisitory Watergate committee had covered up in 1964 when the Bobby Baker scandal threatened to lead to Lyndon Johnson's White House. Democratic Senators Sam Ervin, North Carolina, Herman Talmadge, Georgia, and Daniel Inouye, Hawaii, repeatedly had crippled attempts to get at the truth in the earlier case. With Nixon, the partisan trio was as much for disclosure as it had been for keeping the lid on the LBJ administration's illegalities. Sorry.
That's interesting. I've never heard that case about it. I've never heard that about Irvin, by the way. And like, so Vulpes knows the name of the man that I had in mind. He's Blaze Foley. Blaze Foley pilled. Yeah. The problem is I didn't intend to become this way. I did not want to become this way, and I am this way. I mean, I've become exactly the thing that I despise. But luckily, Blaze Foley, you can only live like this for so long. Most people who end up like I am, they don't make it out of their 30s, and so like it's got to be ending soon. But yeah, but no, the issue here with the Irvin thing, I've never heard this about him, and I've never heard this crew say this sort. I've never heard them say anything but good things about him. So this is an interesting fold. Attacking a character that I know to generally have been considered an ally. Sort of interesting.
Let's see. With Nixon, the partisan trio was as much for disclosure as it had been for keeping the lid on the LBJ administration illegalities. Similarly, when Daniel Ellsberg's security breach became an issue in the Pentagon Papers hullabaloo, the left was fulsome in praise of him. Fulsome in praise of him. Love that. Love that. These same hypocrites claimed to be dismayed at the misdemeanors of Watergate. Hatred was kept focused on the Republican president as though he had personally tortured puppy dogs in the Oval Office. You're giggling at the tortured puppies. Remember, Sandbatch. Everything is authentic.
I mean,
you're giggling at the torture of puppy dogs in the Oval Office.
Drowned. It's my second Iago reference of the drowned cats and blind puppies. Put money in thy purse. This Shakespeare reference.
Oh yeah.
I hate the more. It's in the same speech. Yeah,
that's right. All right, we are going to finish this. We're going to finish this chapter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it. If you hate something, don't you do it too? There we go. Nevertheless, a Harris poll released in May of 1973 indicated that the American people, by a 77 to 13% margin, did not think President Nixon should resign. So on April 30th, H.R. Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, John Dean, and Attorney General William Kleindienst, I'm going to go with that one, had stepped down. But the sniping kept on. In October 1973, Vice President Spiro Agnew was picked off in an unrelated case having to do with campaign contributions in Maryland when he was governor. Pleading no contest to a charge of income tax evasion, Agnew paid a fine and resigned his office. Gerald Ford took his place. Blooded, the wolf pack cried for more. Private tape recordings were ordered by the courts to be given by President Nixon to Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. Cox mentioned again. This led in turn to the Saturday Night Massacre, although nobody died. Yet, as syndicated columnist John Chamberlain remarked, when Nixon appointed Archibald Cox as a special prosecutor, he retained the right to fire him in case of extraordinary improprieties. Cox leaked information about his investigatory activities to his Kennedy friends on Capitol Hill. Wasn't this an impropriety that Nixon had a right to regard as extraordinary? That's a little bit of a Carlson-esque rhetorical question.
From Fresh Prince Carlson?
Tucker.
Okay.
I said Carlson. Did I say Carlson?
No,
I meant
Carlson. You said it right. I'm just the
Who the hell is Gary Allen? Right.
No.
No, not when the deck is stacked against you. Tom Wicker, the New York Times establishment pundit, had given his approval for Nixon to go in late November 1973, saying the confirmation of Gerald Ford as Vice President of the United States was the last necessary step to make possible the removal of Richard Nixon from the presidency. Whether or not that removal now takes place, it has become at least a live and thinkable possibility. Gerald Ford was in the Warren Commission, allegedly the guy who came up with the magical bullet theory.
Really? I didn't know that.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Intellectual luminary, Gerald Ford.
Now, when it comes to Gerald Ford, may be the chattest man to ever be president.
No, not possible.
Dude, he was pretty Chad.
Andrew Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew Jackson had an actual kill count.
Well,
substantial
Ford was a fighter pilot.
Andrew Jackson had a non-wartime kill count.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No,
He
that's
won a lot of duels.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
Although
he also lost more. He also lost more than one and lived through it.
Which is in and of itself kind of hard. The thing is that so Ford was like the greatest would get a beer with the guy. Like Gerald Ford, like watching a football game with Gerald Ford is probably the most like superlative experience a person could have.
You see, then there's me. I would choose to watch a football game with Thomas Jefferson and like just be like watch him just twitch.
Thomas Jefferson would not watch the football game. He would try to like figure. He would be counting all the people in the stadium and trying to figure out like.
Yes.
He would be looking at the construction of the rise of the decks of the stadium and like desperately wanting to like figure out what the fuck all those things are in the parking lot.
Yes. Oh, I'm not going to distract you. How much more do we have?
One more page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It quickly became obvious that a semi-judicial lynching was forthcoming. Man, I could go for some semi-judicial lynching. Columnist Nicholas von Hoffman, during supposedly impartial proceedings to uncover the facts, overheard an all too typical congressman bragging, as reported in the Washington Post for April 19th, 1974. We're going to impeach his ass. We're going to do it. William Safire, then out of the White House and with the New York Times, saw the handwriting on the wall, noting that by choice of counsel, the House Judiciary Committee has made it plain that it intends to look busy for a few months and then recommend impeachment of the president. For the Democrats on the committee, there was a lawyer, John Doerr, former head of the Civil Rights Division in Robert F. Kennedy's Justice Department. My father. The minority counsel was Albert Jenner, who actually had been first choice of the Democratic Judiciary Chairman Peter Rodino. Jenner had recommended Doerr and then took the opposite number later. Attorney Jenner commented Bill Safire was supposedly a Republican conservative, but after he had been chosen, word leaked out that Jenner had been a fundraiser for Democratic Senator Adlai Stevenson of Illinois. Certainly a material fact of his political background that he had concealed from the Republicans who chose him. Getting Richard Nixon, reflected Victor Lasky, was then the name of the game. When Doerr finally dropped his mask of impartiality and stood as a self-appointed Torquemada, Torquemada did nothing wrong. Rodino said proudly, "When I hired him, I always knew he eventually would do this." Rodino himself was quoted telling several journalists in June of 1974 that all his committee Democrats would vote for impeachment, and that if 5 Republicans also vote for it, the full House will follow suit. Rodino then denied he said any such thing, but lying was only considered criminal if it happened in the Nixon White House. Impeachment was ordered out of committee, with prospects that the full House would soon follow. Senator Goldwater told the president that he could count on perhaps a maximum of 15 votes in the upper chamber against his conviction. It was over. The so-called smoking gun was revealed on August 5th, 1974, when transcripts of tapes made on June 23rd, 1972, revealed that Richard Nixon was early on involved in the cover-up and had ordered what appeared to be obstruction of the FBI's Watergate investigation. Big deal. Discussing this case, William P. Hoare has accurately summarized the fact that Richard Nixon's involvement in Watergate was penny ante stuff, hardly constituting the crime of the century. And that is a very important point. The duly elected president of the United States was forced from office for chicken stealing, doing exactly what every president has been doing since 1932, to be taught the lesson that even the powers of the presidency are subordinate to those of the insiders of the liberal establishment. On August 8th, 1974, Richard Milhouse Nixon announced his resignation from the presidency. The next day, Gerald Ford was sworn into office. Consider the many ironies in all this. Richard Nixon, who made his reputation as the congressman who gave Whittaker Chambers his opportunity to blow the whistle on Alger Hiss, gained the White House by placating the establishment at every opportunity after 1962. He sent Henry Kissinger to Red China and later recognized that butcher government. He sent Henry Kissinger to Paris, and Kissinger negotiated the surrender in Vietnam, for which he won the Nobel Peace Prize, tax-free. Result, the liberals savaged Nixon for his trouble. Richard Nixon was probably the most astute political technician of the second half of the 20th century. Obviously, not fucking true based on your previous paragraph, but okay.
I mean,
he had an incomparable knowledge of the way that men get elected and stay in office. Irony, he couldn't keep his office. Richard Nixon used his political savvy to get himself the Republican nomination in 1968. He rose from the political grave that Howard K. Smith's smug 1962 television documentary, The Political Obituary of Richard Nixon, had sentenced him to. Smith even had the gall. I would love to watch that, actually. Smith even had the gall to allow Alger Hiss to comment on Nixon's loss to Edmund G. Pat Brown in the race for governor of California. But Nixon, ever the man with the inferiority complex, handed his presidential campaign over to gray sludge establishment political hacks the day after his nomination, meaning that the day after conservatives had succeeded in getting him the nomination. He seemed in awe of the John Mitchell types and New York lawyers and bond salesmen. Result, a bunch of them wound up in prison and took Nixon's political career with them. Little fish fried. Nixon jumped into the fire while calm and cool, and the big fish silently swam away from the conflagration. Kind of a mixed metaphor there. This is not really. They watched the spectacle from a safe distance. So far as I can tell, as I look back on Watergate, not one Council on Foreign Relations member went down with the Nixon ship. Probably just another coincidence.
Now, let there be no mistake in the history books about that. Richard Nixon was an evil man. Evil in a way that only those who believe in the physical reality of the devil can understand. He was utterly without ethics or morals or any bedrock sense of decency. Nobody trusted him except maybe the Stalinist Chinese, and honest historians will remember him mainly as a rat who kept scrambling to get back on the ship. It's fitting that Richard Nixon's final gesture to the American people was a clearly illegal series of 2,105 millimeter howitzer blasts, shattered the peace of a residential neighborhood, and permanently disturbed many children. Neighbors also complained about another unsanctioned burial in the yard at the old Nixon place, which was brazenly illegal. It makes the whole neighborhood like a graveyard, said one, and it fucks up my children's sense of values. From Hunter S. Thompson.
Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes.
Yeah. You really should have done the voice.
You can do it. You're like that.
But it fucks up my children's sense of values.
Yeah. Oh man, that's not a bad ending. I like this one more than I like the other version.
Yeah. You know what? I was deeply tempted to stop, but I think that Larry Abraham really has a flair that Gary Allen was sorely lacking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he won me over by really just like 10 years later going hard in the paint for George Wallace. You know, that'll. I mean, I am George Wallace's strongest soldier. Yeah, well, not strongest anymore, but I'm his most diehard soldier. I need, you know. Sloppy Joe asked why Spiro Agnew gets no chatter. He did for a long time, long time. In particular, on the left, Spiro Agnew was quite a meme. But people just don't really remember him anymore. And like a lot of times with the Watergate stuff, it's so, unless you were there watching because there were only 3 television channels back then. And so if you were watching television at all, you were watching the Watergate coverage. People were very familiar at the time with the ins and outs of the Watergate like mess. But they really aren't anymore. And it's one of those de-dimensionalization things. Like the names and faces of the Watergate like fiasco have like sort of receded, and we only remember Nixon now. The Penultimo says, I'd like to see LMD cover any of E. Michael Jones's books. E. Michael Jones, I've done interviews with E. Michael Jones before, and he's the only person I've ever rage quit on in the middle of an interview because he pissed me off so much.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So there's also, let's see, book idea for the podcast, A Cult War by Emmanuel Malinsky.
It's a classic.
Yeah, haven't read, but it's the Judeo-Masonic plan to conquer the world. That'll be a fun one that would be a fun one for me.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, yeah, potentially 286 pages, a small one. I really want to see.
You would be somebody who knows. Is there could I potentially turn my luck around by offering the correct blood sacrifice directly to the Albert Pike Monument?
No.
It doesn't work that way.
Well, because here's the thing that you would know if you'd ever read any Guénon or Evola.
Yeah, I haven't.
You have to be initiated.
Oh, okay.
You can't self-initiation is not a real initiation.
I am a member
like what the Thelemites would tell you.
I am a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, and I've been initiated that way.
Yeah, well, you haven't been initiated to any discipline that Albert Pike was a member of.
He was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Oh well. Oh, sorry. I meant the Scottish Rite.
The important one. The important one. That is true.
You have not been. Yes, you have not. You have not heard anything of the veiled prophet of Khorasan, and so unfortunately, anything that you do in front of the Albert Pike statue, other than fentanyl, will have no effect.
I sent you a picture of it, didn't I?
You did.
It looks like so. Just for the listeners, of course, I'm in New Orleans, which is this fucking hell prison that I am the physical manifestation of. And a couple of years ago, there was it was famous movement to take down all of the Confederate statues, and they took down shitloads of Confederate statues in New Orleans because we had a lot of them, except one.
Albert Pike. Yeah.
Nobody even mentioned the Albert Pike. It's one of the more prominent ones. It's just sitting there on Jefferson, on the Jefferson Davis Highway. It's about a block and a half from from the house I'm living in right now. And yeah, it's just there. Nobody black drug addicts sleep under it. Is what happens now. Covering the Uncle Ted's Manifesto. Ooh.
Yeah, Penultimo. Industrial Society would probably. I mean, there'd be a.
We already talked about Jolly West, though.
Nice. Yeah, I already did it. Well, all right. We're gonna call this, and hopefully by next time I'll have some word from Wendy Paging, PhD, about what she might suggest for our next book.
You need to get her to come on, and she can pop out of a digital cake and announce it.
Oh, that'd be well. Now you see, you should have suggested that privately.
Yeah, see, this is why I never make any money. I don't have a filter.
You're not a showman. You're not a showman. You want to be a star, don't you? All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry about the brief hiatus from last week, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, I'm sorry I called you all gay.
You're discouraged from questioning and thinking critically. You must accept the word of the leaders. They make you feel guilty if you do question or argue. Your environment is often controlled, cutting you off from friends, family, school, previously held beliefs. They want you to become dependent, provide a poor diet, poor health care, little sleep, and long, exhausting hours of work to make you physically weak and lower your ability to think clearly. Subtly, your self-confidence gets undermined, and your self-image or sense of identity is changed. The leaders control channels of communication. They cut off or put down outside sources of information. Then they bombard you with what they want you to think. They use strong peer pressure, playing on your desire to be loved and accepted. The leaders may promise rewards if you obey them, and punishment if you don't. But they alternate harshness and leniency in order to confuse you. The leaders manipulate language, giving special meanings to words that only insiders understand. This is to make you feel like you're part of a special, important, or elite group, and that outsiders are inferior, dangerous, or doomed. You have to confess your shortcomings, mistakes, or misbehavior, sometimes even if these things never really happened. And meanwhile, your time and activities are tightly controlled. You don't have much privacy or energy or time to think because you're too busy doing monotonous, repetitive tasks. The leaders try to control you and even your sexuality, everything about you. They want to exploit you for their own enrichment, their own power or grandiosity. If they succeed, you will declare your loyalty to its leaders, rejecting your old values and way of life. Without realizing it, you will have been changed into a person who is being controlled by a totalist cult.